All right. Okay. Hey, good morning. Welcome to the December 2024 City Planning Commission meeting. Commissioners look forward to hearing your case today as we understand every project is important and unique. In addition, we want to make sure we address all of the docketed items individually with the attention they need to build consensus between the applicant, public, and city staff. Our meeting will follow the advertised docket, and we will hear the cases in the order they are listed, beginning with the consent agenda items, followed by regular docketed items. And I think we've got a special presentation before that, though, today. The commissioners believe we can reach consensus by being brief yet heard. Because our meeting is hybrid and recorded, we have time limits for the cases that we hear, which is 5 minutes for staff presentations, 20 minutes for the applicant, plus any questions by the commissioners. And then once we move to public comment, I will call on those who have joined us here in person first, followed by those who are joining us virtually. We do have a timer to keep our meetings on track and expect public comments to be no longer than 2 minutes when representing as an individual, or up to 5 minutes when representing a community association or a larger group. In all instances, please be brief and limit repetitive comments. If you're joining us virtually, I ask that you be ready to go with your camera on and your name correctly displayed in your system there. So as we get started, I ask staff to provide some additional rules and instructions as we conduct this meeting to ensure that we have minimal disruption and maximum clarity. So Sarah, it's up to you.
Thank you. I'll describe the testimony procedures for our hybrid meeting. For those joining us online, please know that there are two categories of people participating in the meeting: attendees and panelists. Right now, the only panelists are the commission members and city staff. If you are an applicant or a citizen who is interested in a case, please use the raise hand function in Zoom when the chair calls the case to let staff know that they should promote you to a panelist position. When the promotion happens, you will need to accept the promotion. It may appear temporarily as if you have been disconnected, but don't panic, you will reconnect shortly. If you are joining us via the Zoom app on a smartphone or computer, please change your screen name to reflect your legal name. Understand that if you're calling in with a phone number, you cannot adjust your screen name. It just appears as your phone number, and you will not be able to use the raise hand function, but you can raise your hand on the telephone when the case is called by pressing star followed by the number 9. At the time of promotion, the chair would like for you to turn on your camera, and you can be ready to turn on your microphone so that the commission can see and hear you when it is your time to talk. Your microphone needs to always be on mute unless you are giving testimony at the appropriate time. As a reminder, the chat box is only for questions about the agenda, and merits of each case should not be discussed in the chat box. For everyone joining us today in person, please approach the microphone at the podium when it is appropriate to give testimony. You'll need to have any exhibits ready to be shared or on a jump drive. If you are in person, there's no need for you to be in the Zoom meeting also, and joining the meeting in both manners causes a lot of unnecessary feedback and audio disruptions. Those are all of our procedures.
Okay. Do you mind if we go through consent agenda items first and our continuances before you start? Okay, let's do that so we have that out of the road.
Okay. Consent agenda?
Yes, and
Okay.
yeah.
Item number 1 on the consent agenda is case CD CPC 2024-154, a request to approve a project plan in District B3-2 to allow for the construction of an office and medical office building on about 0.5 acres generally located at Benton Boulevard and East 31st Street. Case number 2 is CLD Final Plat 2024-23, a request to approve a final plat in District B1-1 and B3-3 on about 4 acres generally located at southeast corner of Northeast Berry Road and North Brighton Avenue, creating 2 lots for the purpose of a commercial development. Item C3 is CLD Final Plat 2024-27, a request to approve a final plat in District R 1.5 to allow for the creation of 7 lots and 5 tracts for residential development on about 15 acres, generally located at 8199 Northwest Millray Drive. And C4 is CLD Final Plat 2024-3, a request to approve a final plat in District B3-3 on about 3 acres generally located at the southwest corner of Northwest Old Tiffany Springs Road and North Ambassador Drive, allowing for the creation of a mixed-use development on 13 lots.
Okay, any questions from the commissioners regarding the consent agenda items? Okay, at this time, we'll open it up for public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket items C1, C2, C3, or C4, please come forward or raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you will be called upon.
There are no hands raised online.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close public testimony then, and I'll take a motion, please.
Chair Carl, I move to approve the consent docket with conditions.
Second.
So I've got a motion and a second for approval of the consent docketed items. Margaret, can you take roll call on that motion, please?
Beasley? Aye. Crowell?
Aye.
Enders?
Aye.
Hasek?
Aye.
Lynch?
Aye.
Palia?
Aye.
All right, looks like that motion carries. So with that, let's see, can we move to we'll wait. Let's go to our presentation today. Good morning.
You want me to call it
Yes. please.
discussion item number 1? Kansas City, Missouri major street plan discussion.
Thank you, Sarah. Can you see my screen?
There you go.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Plan Commission, Olafo Agbaji City Plan and Development Department. Over the last several years, especially since last year, we've had challenges with the major street plan amendment and various cases that come before you. And as we've stated, there's no process or procedure in the code. So today we're going to give you a quick presentation in what the city, which is DMD and City Plan and Development wants to do to create a process of procedure for amending the major street plan. And during our prior discussion, you also remember that we had talked about revamping the major street plan, and Public Works is here to give you some information about that. I'm going to give you information on establishing a process and procedure for amending it as we move forward, and they will give you just a brief nugget on what they've been doing and where we're going with that. So for what I do, I'll go with the first thing. The current major street plan was last amended in full back in 2011 and briefly amended last September for the deletion of Tiffany Springs Parkway. So since 2011, we are due for another amendment. Again, when I presented my prior presentation, I informed you that there is no process in the code. There's no mention. The only mention in the code about the major street plan is a reference in 88-810, and that is just referencing the major street plan, telling you that based on RISMO 89, for 80, you can do it. City Plan Commission and City Council can do it. We have a definition of the major street plan in the code, and there's an administrative regulation by the city manager that requires that every major street plan goes to the Transportation and Development Committee. Those are the only policies we have that reference the major street plan. Again, the purpose and authority that's currently in the major street plan document itself still references the same RISMO 89-480. That's the only mention of it. And then there's other state statutes that refer to the major street plan without giving us explicit direction on how to do it, when to do it, or why to do it. Just have a brief discussion topics, which is why create a new section in the code to talk about the major street plans. So over the past year, as I was doing this, I went through and checked to see how many major street plans have been applied for. And prior to prior to the compass system, I think we had about total of 21. From 2000 to 2018, we had 21 major street plan application, and not all of them were approved. So when I come back, I'll give you the data in terms of how many were approved and how many were just fell apart. Between 2019 and today, we had 10 applications, which is after the compass system. And of those, we had 6 of them in the last 2 years. So which is why we get into what we're trying to do today. And while we have those, the reason we're trying to establish this process is that we've been doing this as long as the developer is okay with what we're doing. We do not get any pushback. But when they're not, they tell us, show us in the code where we should do this. And I'll tell you some of the reasons include we only refer to major street plan and director's minimum submitter requirement that you should have one. We also have an application for major street plan amendment, but we do not have that process in the code. So that makes it very ambiguous, and the developers, again, there's no defined process. So we run into problems when we are challenged. But this process now will establish a process that everyone will be required to follow. And let me see, there have been recent proposals to amend the plan with limited, we also want to make sure there's public input when we amend the plan, especially if it affects certain properties. If you have property now that shows a major street, that shows your property fronting on a major street plan, and it gets amended, and currently there's no public notification requirement. So if you don't hear about it, you just find out that, well, your property is no longer front on a major street plan. The process I'm going to use will be similar to the vacation process, which is one that's almost citywide. And we will be I'm proposing to put it in section 88559. And I'm going to go through this really quick. Currently in the major street plan, these are some of the criteria to consider when you are trying to amend the major street plan, but it's not in the code. So when I come back, these are some of the criteria we will use within the new process, codifying it rather than being in the document. So this will be the process we will use, and I'm not going to go through all of them. So it goes down to 10. And then in the code, simply put, I'm going to be using these sections within the code. And let me make sure I go through this. So the new section will be major street plan. We'll know what the intent of the major street plan is. We'll also do power to amend the major street plan will be clearly defined. Authority to file, who can file, when they can file. It will require pre-application consultation prior to filing. It also, then you have filed a major application. Notice of hearing will be required as we do with other processes. We would then refer that to the Transportation and Development Committee. We will also refer to Parks and Rec Department if it's on the Boulevard or Parkway. And then after that will come to City Plan Commission, who will then make a recommendation to the City Council, who will review and give final action. We will also include in that approval criteria that will evaluate that proposed amendment prior to making our recommendation. So with that, I'm looking at a timeline of getting today's action was introducing this to you. The next action will be to bring this to you either January 15th or the first week in February. I'll present the draft language for City Plan Commission to go through. And following that, you would then come back after that, probably second week in February, to review and then make a recommendation on that ordinance language to go to City Council. And then we will move forward. We do not move forward with we can move forward with the ordinance, the code amendment separately from the major street plan document. So because this is just the process of that, so we can either wait for them or we can move forward. So I can move either way. So I think that ends my presentation. I'll take any questions.
I guess I just have one. Are we still going to have the TDC committee, or will that now come through Planning Commission, or any updates or changes to?
The AR I showed you, the administrative regulation requires that it goes to the TDC committee. We've never practiced that, so I just put that in there, and it could be a conversation we want to have, but it's good for them to know what's being changed. So.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned that there had been.
You mind speaking in your microphone, please?
You had mentioned that there had been some applications within the past 2 years. Are they through the process, or how will this amendment affect those that have applied recently?
They have all gone through the
They've gone
process.
through?
I don't think I have an active one. We don't have any active one. We
Okay.
dismissed the last one, I think so, and mine got approved and we dismissed one. So there's no active application.
Okay, thank you.
And do you imagine that the next 5 uses of these new processes and procedures will be accompanying a development plan typically?
Yes, if there's any, and those are, it's within the criteria also. If a development plan triggers it, it will also be identified, and we'll run it through the review criteria for amending the major street plan in conjunction with the review criteria for a development plan or special use permit or UR plan.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I like the detail of the subsections you have laid out. And then when you bring it back, if you're able to walk us through an example or two, that would be helpful.
I will make sure I have those, and I'll make sure I bring examples. I have enough, which is why we're doing this and going through this. So I have enough examples to go to.
And then if it's easy enough for you to, since you have all the examples there, if it's easy enough to get the contact information from those developer partners and to notify them, that might be helpful, just since in the past we've, whether right or wrong, parts of the development community have felt left out of these types of things. I mean, it's tough to know who's gonna find this relevant in the future.
We will use our same process that we've been using, at least for the last few months, to notify people. We'll post this on our website. So it will have a process for reaching out to stakeholders for their feedback before it gets to you.
Great. Sounds like a good step. Thanks.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Wrap it up, I think so.
Are you printing out a board for Olafu to use?
We're requesting the overhead projector.
You can open the, here.
Hang on, you sure it's this one? This was 11/20.
Yeah, it's fine. It'll be,
Oh.
that's fine. It just has the wrong date, but that's okay. Okay. All right, thank you. Can you all see this screen now? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. Thank you, commissioners. I'm Bailey Waters with the Public Works Department. And with me is Maggie Green with Burns and McDonnell, who's helping with the project, which is our Safe Streets and Roads for All project that involves the major street plan. So our Safe Streets and Roads for All project has multiple activities that encompass many different departments from Public Works, Planning, Parks, and others. I'll go through what those activities are, kind of what we've heard so far, and then about the major street plan and the streets design guide. So we received a federal grant to align all of our policies and procedures with Vision Zero, which Vision Zero is our goal to have 0 fatalities or serious injury crashes on our streets by 2030. So the intent is to make sure all of our guidance in the city is aligned with safety as the priority. So we're doing multiple activities, from a comprehensive speed limit review on our streets, updating the major street plan, and updating our public works design guides with a Vision Zero focus. Additionally, we're creating a streets design guide to kind of put all design guidance in one location rather than separate documents. We're updating our high injury network, and we are updating our traffic engineering and operations manual. And we're doing a lot of engagement throughout this process.
Just a quick
Yeah.
question. As part of your design process, is that going to be separate from APWA or is it going to be integrated still with APWA?
It would take the place of the APWA 5200 document there.
So it'll be all new Kansas City, Missouri specific standards.
Yeah, a lot of it will probably pull from the APWA stuff, but we'll have our own document. It won't be the APWA of Kansas City document anymore. So kind of some things that we've heard as we've done engagement with the public as well as city council and with developers. Some common things that have come up are that there's really a difference in the rural context of Kansas City and the suburban context and the urban context. So really, as we're going through these things, we need to consider those different contexts in our design guidance. Additionally, there's not a clear process on how and when to amend the major street plan. So hence what Olafu just presented on. Additionally, traffic calming remains a priority in all council districts. Another one is that at a minimum, the major street plan update should include guidance on right-of-way allocation and jurisdiction, as in who owns that road or whose jurisdiction is it under. And there's a desire to consolidate and link our guidance, minimizing conflicting information, making sure the different documents we have don't conflict with each other so that we can give clear guidance to developers and to engineers. I think this is probably pretty clear to you all at this point, but what is the major street plan? It's that guiding document of those like through connector streets that go entirely east-west across the city or north-south, making sure we're having this connected network throughout the city. So there's not certain developments that are filtering on one road entirely, that if we have a connected network, that the stress on it can be less if you have more connections, I guess. So the major street plan is guiding our roadway network in that way of having those connections. It is used by developers and by city planning and people who are platting, as you all know, because you see the things come here. And decisions made from it today are amount of right-of-way needed on these roads. And also it currently specifies the roadway configuration in terms of number of lanes and what those lanes look like. And it dictates the alignment for unbuilt streets. So that's currently the major street plan. Here's just kind of an image of what it currently looks like and showing different street typologies for maybe a different street that you have. Some of our key findings from the existing major street plan and those typologies are that like design guidance on these aren't fully up to date for best practices. Example of that is there's no guidance for off-street bicycle facilities, which we know are a more comfortable facility for bikers. There's only guidance for on-street bicycle facilities. There's no guidance at all right now on pedestrian space. The typologies don't always reflect current best practices for Vision Zero. And the cross sections don't account for what happens at intersections, which are commonly the most dangerous part of a road. In addition, there's no clear process on how and when to update or amend it. Again, hence what Olafu just presented on. And there needs to be more clarity and guidance on established versus unbuilt streets and how much right-of-way we might be asking for on an unbuilt street versus a street where there's already buildings up next to it. So those are some of the key findings. So some recommendations that we have found for the major street plan are, and how we're wanting to move forward is removing the content about typologies from the major street plan and pull that into a streets design guide. So the major street plan would solely be allocating where those through streets need to be and how much right of way they need to have, but not the design of that road. The design of that road would come from a streets design guide, which is where we'd consolidate all of our design guidance. And so that's the recommendation for the major street plan, is replacing our street typology map with functional classification map. The federal government and MARC, our MPO, they have like a regional map of all the roads in the MARC region classified as arterials and collectors and local links. So we would follow that functional classification map as our guidance on the major street plan. And that map, of course, only considers already built streets. So we would continue to have those unbuilt roads on our major street plan and connecting into the existing network. Additionally, we would distinguish between existing versus proposed streets, like I just mentioned. We would remove the number of lanes from the major street plan and really just focus on amount of right-of-way. And we would continue to have parkways and boulevards on the major street plan. So there would be like a green overlay on ones which are parks department, roadways, and they would still have jurisdiction over those. In addition, there's been discussion on the special purpose mass transit corridor, so looking into having an overlay for that corridor as well. And then working in conjunction on updating our policy for how do we update the major street plan.
Can you restate the through lane map comment?
Yeah, so the intent of the major street plan is to make sure that our city has roads that connect fully north-south and fully east-west, so that you aren't having to go, I guess, zigzagging around or going through different neighborhoods, but there are dedicated streets to have full access. And so the major street plan identifies those, I guess, more major streets that are a longer connector through the city. And some of them are already built, or some of them might be gravel roads that need to be improved because they're designated as a proposed like through street. Others maybe haven't been built at all. Does that help?
A little bit. So it
Okay.
says remove through lane map.
Oh, remove through lane map just means we would remove from the major street plan. It currently tells you that this road would need to be 4 lanes and this road would need to be 6 lanes and this one 2 lanes. We would remove number of lanes from that, but it would still be designated as a through street. It's just the number of lanes and the street typology would come from the design guide. Yeah.
And then because it's a design guide,
Mhm.
what's the determination as to, where we land on what the design is? And so if if it's up to the city and public works, that's one thing, because the city can just decide. But then if we're asking someone to pay in or to change their development based upon the design, then we have the opportunity for someone to say, well, you're choosing the wrong, or you're interpreting the design guidelines incorrectly. So what would that process look like?
So if someone is building out a road and they're looking at this design guidance, there would be flexibility in this design guidance between your context, right? If you're in a suburban context, rural context, urban context, and looking at different options for like, what does that arterial road look like? If there are changes or like, if they're not wanting to follow design guidance, that would likely come through Public Works and Transportation and Development Committee. If there's like changes to the streets design guide that are being sought, or I guess, I don't know if changes is the right word, deviances maybe. Yeah, maybe deviation.
And if I could add, Commissioners, Maggie Green with Burns and McDonnell, part of the sort of flow, the workflow I think you're describing of when we have an example, how is it actually working through the process? We are currently kind of developing that. And so it's the intent at the beginning of the streets design guide to have a flow chart that very clearly outlines the steps of, when you have the classification for the road, the amount of right of way, okay, we know it's this particular typology is what it corresponds to. Okay, so now we go to the design guide. So all of that mapping out is something that we know needs to be very clear, and something that we're actively working on kind of based on all the feedback that we're hearing, and would be sort of at the front section, the introduction of the streets design guide is how to actually use it. But a lot of it would be back to the staff folks to kind of recommend, here is this a lot of flexibility, but your right of way is falling within this particular typology, and these are the options in the design guide for what you could choose there.
And so the big step that you all feel pretty confident about is removing requirements based upon lane count and changing it to just right of way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And so some of our next steps are shown here. You can see right now we're developing the guide. In early 2025, we will have more public listening sessions. We're hashing out what that will look like And then doing our city council roadshow number 2. So coming back to the city council, explaining, you know, where we've come from the beginning of the project to having some more documents developed. And then springtime next year, presenting the major street plan update for you all to adopt, and for city council to adopt. And then at around the same time, the streets design guide and partner with that to be adopted. But between now and then, there's still quite a bit of design guide development as well as engagement to happen with the intent of spring or summer next year being done.
Is the information that's in the, or going to be in the design guide, is that currently in code or the major street plan, or it just doesn't exist?
Yeah, it exists in some different locations. There are multiple documents that kind of have design guidance. There's the APWA 5200 design guidance. There is some in the code on complete streets, but not a lot. Like there was a complete streets ordinance passed, but no design guidance adopted for that. And there's parkways and boulevards design guidance as well. And so all of these things would be in one spot in our streets design guide, rather than these like separate documents that maybe don't all talk together very well.
So is it pulling that information out of those other documents so that they would be voided and just housing it in this one place?
Yeah.
And does that afford designers and city planning like a better degree of flexibility in what they're doing, or no?
In some ways, yes, and in other ways, it gives more clear guidance where there may be none right now. Because if there's no guidance right now on something, then there's all the flexibility in the world, right? Like you just don't know what you're doing. So we're going to be more clear on what is the best design for a safe street, but offering that flexibility of, you know, maybe not every arterial road needs to be 5 lanes wide. Maybe it could look different.
If it's not already a part of the process, if you all could add costs and financing to the part of the exploration of this and recommendations, I think that'd be helpful because I feel as though anecdotally, if I'm considering a street that's been improved, to me, it appears like it's a much more expensive street. And I don't know if our council will have a budget that, you know, keeps up with the new design guidelines. And then similarly, it'd be interesting to know if, you know, you have a huge right of way dedicated, but you don't need as many lanes. Well, maybe you actually save money on the amount of lanes that you're paving. But I think that that'd be important to add to this. So that way we don't just all of a sudden decide we want a whole lot of things that we can't keep up for. And then all of a sudden Public Works is like asked for even more, to do even more with even less.
Yeah, great point. And is being considered. I think we're looking more so at reducing number of lanes being asked for. And so it would hopefully be less maintenance there.
Yeah, because what I would love to see, and might be like way too theoretical, but in theory, it's like while we are improving this street for different modes of transit, and making it, and it's more expensive, but it's highly trafficked, et cetera, we've identified other areas that can be on a road diet in the sense of just removing lanes and then reducing the cost. And if we could kind of balance that type of effort, that would be really exciting.
This is a really great point, and I'll just point out one of the sections that we're working on for the design guide is an implementation section, to kind of explain what are the options if we're looking at a particular street, and we have one that's, you know, a fancy option, right? That's most expensive, you know, and then down to what could be more paint or, you know, sort of a quick implementation that may be less expensive. So to Bailey's point, it's something we're talking about, and definitely know that it will be desired to have that level of flexibility if we're looking at, you know, safe options, but options that kind of span a range of, you know, something that's a big investment versus something that has a safety benefit, but can be, you know, include guidance that's a little bit less expensive.
I think in that same light, are you also looking at the impact fee and how that works and how much it is and how effective it is or isn't?
Great question. I know that there's a desire to look further into the impact fee. We will be looking into on the major street plan update how many roads are either being added or removed from the major street plan. And so looking at that aspect of like, are there extra roads? But in regards to actually updating the impact fee, I'm not doing that as part of this process, but Yeah, it's noted.
That's a to-do after this is done.
Yeah,
Yeah,
or at the same time, but we'll see.
okay.
So can I ask the point of clarification on my side? Because it seems that the conversation is more directed to new development. And my question is, how will this plan affect Public Works when they want to come out and do some changes to roadways?
Mm.
How are we addressing that?
Mm-hmm. So this will come in effect, like our public works team in different ways. Some ways, like on an existing road that might need relooked at, we would have different typology options for them to consider. And so that's one example, or on existing streets, just looking at different roadway configurations. On new streets that maybe aren't built yet, this design guidance would help them to figure out, based on zoning and how much development is around, what kind of road this might need to look like, rather than just saying, oh, that has to be 4 lanes and here's the typology like what was shown earlier. So there would be ways to use it in both the existing context and in the unbuilt context. I don't know if that helps clarify anything.
I just want to make sure what we're doing is not going to inhibit the actual department when they look at a road that needs to be improved or changed in some manner.
I don't think it will. Nicholas Bossoneto, our city engineer, is aware of this project as well. And so we have multiple people in Public Works who are aware and engaged in these updates to make sure that we do have the flexibility we need as staff when we're going to make changes. I don't foresee it inhibiting us, but yeah, I don't know. I'll continue to talk to them, yeah.
Yes, hello, Nicholas Bossoneto, city engineer. So I think they're doing, this is a great project. This is the 1971 version of the major street plan. And basically, all it had was just the map of the streets. And then just, it basically is just a list of the streets. And it's basically just a platting document. So basically, all the major street plan is supposed to be is, when we're doing platting, subdivisions, we reserve right away. We're still going to reserve 80 feet or 100 feet, but then when we go to design a street, we'll have the flexibility to build what we need at that time within that right of way. We're going to plat the right of way for future use. But for example, Holmes is a perfect, from 135th to Blue Ridge. The major street plan calls for a 4-lane section, but we're out there designing it right now, just a 3-lane section. So maybe in 100 years, we build it out, who knows? But so this actually just gives us the flexibility to design what we need to design now, but still have the right of way for the future. So I think this is a very good move, and we'll still have that flexibility to come back in and make improvements in future years.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I've just got one. So it sounds like there's a lot of addressing the process for sectional qualities of some of these roads. Is there anything in the update to address sort of a top-down plan view specifically at certain intersections, for example, to understand how all the different components of the street plan connect to one another in this?
So there will be some design guidance for intersections, but not necessarily like a plan on, oh, the city's going to go do these intersections next. It's not that type of process, but it will have design guidance. Like if someone is at an intersection, here's some options they should consider, whether it be, mobility hubs or bus stops or whatever the thing is, bump outs. Yeah.
Sure.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you. Good presentation.
Thank you all for listening.
All right, let's move on to our regular docketed items, beginning with those that are looking to be continued to a future date.
Our first continuance is item number 2.1 and 2.2, case CD CPC 2024-136, a request to approve a development plan which also serves as preliminary plat to allow 5 multi-unit residential buildings in proposed District DR-5 on about 1.83 acres generally located at the northwest and northeast corners of East 31st Street and Walnut Street, northeast corner of East 31st Street and Grand Avenue, and northeast corner of East 31st Street and McGee Street. Case 2.2 is CDCPC 2024-135, a request to approve a rezoning from District UR to District DR-5 on about 1.83 acres generally located at the northwest and northeast corners of East 31st Street and Walnut Street, northeast corner of East 31st Street and Grand Avenue, and northeast corner of East 31st Street and McGee Street. Staff recommends continuance without fee to December 18th. The next continuance is item number 8, CDCPC 2024-128, a request to approve a rezoning from District R 7.5 to District R 1.5 on about 0.47 acres generally located at the southeast corner of East 88th Street and Sycamore Avenue. Staff recommends continuance without fee to December 18th. Item number 11 is case CDCPC 2024-166, a request to approve a de-annexation from the corporate limits of the city of Kansas City, Missouri to permit subsequent annexation by the city of Parkville, Missouri on about 80 acres generally located between Northwest 52nd Terrace on the south, Northwest 56th Street on the north, and the corporate limits of the city of Parkville on the west. Staff recommends continuance without fee to December 18th. Item 12.1, CDCPC 2024-104, a request to approve a rezoning from District UR to R2.5 on about 1.8 acres generally located at the northeast corner of Brooklyn Avenue and East 20th Street. And case 12.2, CDCPC 2024-123, a request to approve an area plan amendment for the heart of the city area plan from residential low density to residential medium density on about 1.8 acres generally located at the northeast corner of Brooklyn Avenue and East 20th Street. Staff recommends continuance off docket with fee. And item 13, case CDCPC 2024-152, a request to approve a major amendment to an approved development plan to incorporate new phasing and building layout in District M2-2 to allow for the existing land reclamation, quarry, excavation, asphalt, and concrete batch plants, and future office, commercial, and warehouse development on about 70 acres generally located at the northwest corner of East 63rd Traffic Way and I-435. Staff recommends continuance without fee to December 18th.
Okay, any questions from the commissioners regarding the continuance of those docketed items? All right, seeing none, let's open it up for public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to discuss the continuance of docket items 2.1, 2.2, 8, 11, 12.1, 12.2, or 13, please come forward or raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you will be called upon.
We did have a hand raised online.
Okay,
Patricia Lozowitz.
I'm here.
yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
And which,
Go ahead.
yeah, I was just curious which case you were wanting to talk about regarding a continuance?
152, the development on 63rd Street and 435. I am the president of Swamp Ridge Neighborhood Association, and I have been in contact also with Brown Estates, which is on the north side of that project. There's a couple things that we're concerned about. Number one, the asphalt plant.
Yep, hold on, ma'am. Don't really want to get into the merits of the case. We're just looking to continue that one to a future date, to the next meeting.
Okay.
So hopefully you can.
So who do I need? I have not been invited to any public input on this case.
Okay.
And I need to have some help with this to be able to make sure that they understand our concern.
Okay,
Ma'am, if you'll stay on a minute, I'll give you some information for the planner on this case in the chat, and then you can get in contact with them.
I did send the planner an email. He did not respond.
Okay.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else, sir?
There are no other hands raised online.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public testimony then, and I'll take a motion on the continuances, please.
Chair Crowley, move to continue docket items 2.1, 2.2, 8, 11, 12.1, 12.2, and 13 as stated in the docket.
Second.
So I've got a motion and a second for continuance of those docketed items as stated. Margaret, can you take roll call on that motion, please?
Beasley,
Aye.
Crowell,
Aye.
Enders.
Aye.
Hasek.
Aye.
Lynch.
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
It looks like that motion passes then. Let's move to docket item 1, please.
Item number 1 is case CD SUP 2024-42, a request to approve a special use permit for group living on about 0.5 acres, generally located at 1520 Cherry Street. Anna is online this morning.
Okay, is the applicant available? All right, come on up if you don't mind. I ran out of time already? Okay.
If I have a short presentation to share, is this the correct computer to plug into?
Yeah,
or should
we'll
I
get
go-
somebody to help load that up so you can share it, but we're going to hear from the staff presentation first.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me and see my screen all right?
We can see your screen and hear you. Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, on Ananiski Development Management Division, as mentioned, this is CD SUP 2024-42, and the applicant is seeking approval of a special use permit to expand a group living use on the subject property by constructing an addition to an existing building in a existing vehicular use area. So the site is located just adjacent to the downtown area, what I consider to be some of the Crossroads district. More specifically, it is located in between Locust Street and Cherry Street. We can see a close-up of the site on the screen. The main parcel is highlighted in yellow. They do have an adjoining building to the north that is also shaded in yellow. And this is a look of the site from Google Street View. And I point your attention to the vacant space in between the two buildings where there's an existing vehicular use area. This is where the location of the proposed project is occurring. So we have a rendering of what the building will look like that was provided by the applicant. And another look at the site plan provided by the applicant. As we can see, the existing vehicular use area is going to be completely filled up with this addition, which is just expanding the group living use that currently exists in the two existing buildings to the north and south. The review criteria associated with the special use permit is on the screen. I'm not going to go over all the items, just the 3 criteria that showcases city staff's recommendation. So first is review criteria B, which is will the project be in the public interest and not have significant adverse impacts on the surrounding community. So we do believe that a mixture of residential uses is important for a large community like Kansas City, Missouri. Additionally, a group living use in downtown or in downtown adjacent neighborhoods, which is close to where there are lots of vulnerable populations, it's good for those uses to be there. We have C, review criteria C, which is the proposed project compatible with the character of the neighborhood in terms of site planning and building scale and building design. So as I mentioned before, this is just an expansion of an existing use. So the proposed project is compatible with the character of existing conditions. We see again the addition in context with the two buildings to either side of them. They're infilling it. The design is compatible with what is there now. And review criteria D, which talks about the operational characteristics of the project and if that is compatible with the surrounding area. So again, it's just the expansion of existing use. So we don't believe that it's going to substantially affect the surrounding area. The proposal includes the addition is to accommodate dwelling units that will hold around 24 additional people and some amenities associated with that, like a little courtyard. So we think that that addition is considered minimal in minimal in terms of scale of the project, of how many additional humans are going to be held in this addition. So thus, city staff, we recommend approval subject to condition, and condition number 5 does need to be resolved prior to the BZA review. And I know that the client is working with the Water Services Department currently to fix that issue. That concludes my staff report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission to city staff? Okay, let's welcome the applicant then. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. My name is Nick Kratz. I'm the project architect with HOK on this project, and I have with me Eric Berger, the executive director of Shelter KC. Anna did a great job of introducing the project, and I will try not to share redundant information, just be able to work through this quickly. Like she said, we're applying for a special use permit. Well, really, as I understand it, it's a amendment to an existing special use permit that the facility currently has, to kind of upgrade the facility and move some of those folks from their current spots into a new upgraded home. So I'm just going to quickly orient you and then go over some project goals that we've been working with the team on. And then I will just show some updated conceptual imagery of kind of.
Yep, 1 second.
Yes.
I don't think our screen is advancing, the shared one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Maybe go to display settings here behind that. And
Duplicate. Thank you.
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So then I'll just run through some conceptual imagery that shows kind of the facility and some sequencing, and the new amenity spaces that we'll be providing. So like Anna said, we're located in the East Crossroads, just south of Truman Road. Kind of see we're nestled between 71, 670, and the KC Star building, kind of right over in that area that's developing. What we're really trying to do here is create a new front door for the Shelter KC facility that will allow us to have an upgraded set of amenity spaces that really just give them the better tools to support their guests and staff. We want to be able to focus on the whole person and really just give a restful space for the guests as they transition into kind of back into the public realm. So we've been thinking really just what are basic human rights, what makes a person well, what should a shelter provide, just have been questions that we've been asking ourselves along the way as we've been designing the project, just really trying to support Shelter KC and their mission in the East Crossroads. I will just go through some imagery. Like Anna shared, this is the primary elevation of the building off of Cherry Street. You can see we've tried to integrate the different textures of the crossroads with matching brick, some updated paneling, and including artwork and signage in the facility to really mesh with what's going on. This is a view of the porch that is also a controlled queuing area where guests will queue at certain hours of the day to get entered into the facility. They will then move into a checkpoint kind of initial intake and a reception area that will be staffed 24/7 and have great views to the exterior with both direct windows and security cameras. And you can see you then have direct access to a new courtyard that serves the guests and staff and kind of creates an ancillary waiting space and just public use for folks who are in the building. And this is that space, really just meant to be a kind of a quiet rest space that also could kind of transform into if there was a small staff event or something that happened there. Immediately behind this is the chapel. You can see the courtyard on the right. This is a new upgrade from their current facility, which is being used as more of a multi-purpose room. This will be a great new chapel that's dedicated for that purpose, but has the ability to flex into a larger gathering as needed. And then moving upstairs, we've created a few new kind of living room spaces that really serve the guests and create restful spaces that are dedicated rather than kind of having to use multi-purpose areas. Thank you for your time.
Okay, Mr. Berger, you mind talking a little bit about your program and
Sure.
how it works?
So there's a couple of different elements of shelter KC. So one is we are not a low barrier shelter. We basically give a 14-day stay. And then after that, you have to agree to be working a life plan or go into a Christ-centered recovery program. And so this new facility, the housing on the 3rd floor, is for people that are in a 9-month structured recovery program. The other piece that we're really excited about is when we did our phase 1 renovation, we lost some of our common spaces, and we really have not had enough space for classrooms, lobbies, that entrance area, our own interior place, so that when people during the night want to go out and maybe we just need to have a smoke or whatever, we need to have that interior space. So those are kind of things that we're really trying to focus on.
How many folks do you have now? Are you full capacity or?
Yeah, we're mostly at about a 3-day waiting list to come into us. So often people are going and staying right now at the cold weather shelter or at City Union. And then because we have some of our programs have more job training and so on, people want to come into our program. So we're able to be, you have to be committing to making some change to be in our programs. Versus the low barrier shelters, you can be intoxicated. There's a need for that, but that's not what we do.
You have security on site or no? Maintenance staff is on site full
Yeah.
time or how does?
Yeah, so what we have is we're 24/7.
Okay.
And we use peer specialists. So we have certified peer specialists. They're trained in de-escalation, they're relational, they're working with people. And so that's staff 24/7. 1/3 of our staff has once been homeless. And so their ability to relate is really strong.
Any questions from the commission?
You kind of touched on it a little bit. Can you just talk about capacity of the spaces that exist now and capacity with these new renovations?
Yeah, so we're at 124 currently, and we'll continue to be at 124 because when we did our phase 1 renovations, we moved some people around and we have some people in some temporary spaces that'll go back. So right now, our multi-purpose room, we're using temporarily for housing. And so guys in our recovery program are in a dorm that's for the guests, and they'll move upstairs, and people that are in the overflow will now move into that space. So it's not adding any more beds to our existing space. What we're mostly doing is moving people into less crowded spaces. We're creating much more classrooms, community spaces, offices, and so on.
And do you provide services to people not staying overnight?
No, so pretty much you have
Okay,
to be staying with us. The 14-day guest program, those folks leave during the daytime. And then they come back every evening. And then after that 14 days, you have to be working a plan. I think here's one of the things that 60 to 70% of our overall clients are employed. Some are employed when they come, but majority after that 14 days we're working on getting them employment. So most people are working jobs, and so the nighttime is kind of when we're the busiest, because that's when everybody's in. That's when we're kind of working with people, because in daytime, most people are working.
Thanks.
So part of your information was saying that it was dealing with group housing. How is that set up?
So in our recovery program, we have phases. And so the phase one will be in I think there's some 8, 6, and 4-person dorms. We use a thing called step-up beds, which are kind of unique, so that they have individual dividers. Instead of a bunk bed, you just have 3 steps. And then farther in the program, you move into 2-person rooms that also works in transition. One of the things is we currently have those 2-person rooms that are the second story of our existing building. And one of the things that will happen now is the second story of the new building and the second story of the old building will become seamless. And those people will now be able to enter over there. So this will be the entry part. Right now, those folks are just kind of in one larger dorm. And so we're going from that larger dorm to smaller rooms for that population.
Okay. Thank you.
I got a question for Anna. Special use permit, is that only for this new piece, or does it start the clock on the existing pieces and include this new piece?
It is only for this new piece.
Okay, so they have to, how much time is left on the rest of the site? Special use
So,
permit.
yeah, so the reason why Nick mentioned, the amendment to the special use permit is because when the use was first established, it was, just like allowed by right. But now in this zoning code, if it was to be established, it would require a special use permit. So anything beyond that existing nonconformity triggers the SUP.
What length of time is tied to it?
Sorry,
What length of time is tied to this SUP?
this one is tied 5 years.
Okay.
Okay. All right, any other questions for the applicant? All right, seeing none, let's open it up for public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket item number 1, please come forward or raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you'll be called upon. Good morning.
Mr. Chair, members of the Plan Commission, Jerry Riffle, Lathrop GPM, 2345 Grand, Kansas City, Missouri. To my right is Matt Abbott. He's the president and CEO of Abbott Properties. Abbott Properties is a neighbor in many ways. It has developed and redeveloped many properties in the area. Its headquarters in the area, its national headquarters is in the area. It leases properties to a number of neighbors. We have provided correspondence to the applicant, which we will make part of the record, but what we're requesting simply is that this be held 2 weeks so that we can engage in 2 major activities in that area. 1, we'd like to negotiate a neighborhood agreement, and 2, we'd like to explore their business and social plans. According to the staff report, this is going to result in 24 additional residents in the area. As you know, there are specific requirements for a special use permit, and those requirements are well stated in the case law and there are very, very good rational reasons for them. The BZA hearing, they will have to show it is in the interest, as staff indicated, of the public convenience, and will not have a significant adverse impact on the general welfare of the neighborhood or community. In other words, it needs to be consistent with the development patterns, public safety, and uses in that area. And secondly, it's compatible with the character of the surrounding area in terms of site planning and building scale and project design. We want to be a good neighbor. We want them to be a good neighbor, and we think a 2-week hold to make sure we understand and have a good neighbor is very reasonable. Matt?
Hello, my name is Matt Abbott. First of all, I just found out about this about less than 2 weeks ago and attended a meeting with Nick and Eric. And first of all, I want to say we're not against this. We're for this. We're just for it being done correctly. And we're for slowing down the process so that we can understand it more and communicate it more with the neighborhood. We believe that they provide a great service, but this is a long-term investment that they're going to spend millions of dollars. And we want to have a conversation. We currently own 16 properties or 16 city parcels within 2 city blocks, and we own close to 40 city parcels within 6 city blocks of this. And we have over 50 tenants located within city blocks of this that we represent their best interests. And so we've just began reaching out to our tenants to get their concerns heard and get their feedback. So we haven't been given enough time to be prepared today to tell you the concerns and feedback of all of our tenants and how we feel about how we make this into a win-win for everybody. All we're asking for is to give us a little bit of time so that we can work together to come to a good neighborhood agreement. I will share that, in our experience, we have had within a half city block of this property. This year we've had an arson. Years ago we had an arson. And so we have some concerns as neighboring tenants that we do feel an impact from this shelter being in our neighborhood. It's not that we're against it. We just want to make sure that there's accountabilities and promises that are in place so that when these things happen, us neighbors have assurances that we're being taken care of too, and that we're not having the burden of this in our neighborhood that we have to suffer through things like arsons. That's all we're asking for.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else, sir?
Mr. Chairman, I'll just make this part of the record if I could. I'll just leave it with staff. That's all right.
Yep.
The letter where we requested their cooperation on the whole. And I corrected the incorrect.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else like to speak?
There are no hands raised online.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close public testimonies. Obviously, there seems to be some discussion that could happen within the neighborhood as a 2-week continuance on this. Thought about that? So that you can have those discussions?
Yeah, here's our feeling on that. We're ready to have those discussions now. We'll do anything that is reasonable and set it in writing agreements. There are probably things that we currently do. I think where our concern a bit is you start getting into things that, crime is going up everywhere, and all of a sudden it sometimes feels like, okay, so that's your people. Well, hang on a second. We have standards on the people that are staying with us. We'll define that. We'll hold people accountable. We're ready to do that agreement today. We'll meet with people at any time. We're glad to do that. We are accountability oriented. I think our concern a bit is you start going into broad things that we're not sure, how do you start going as crime needs to go down. You're a magnet. Well, if you look at 311 calls relating to homeless, the Crossroads actually is lower than most of the other places, at least according to the unhoused department. So we'll sit down and have those conversations. We're glad to do that. Since the final decision still doesn't happen, we're eager to have those. But we would like to, stay on our schedule, and we'll certainly meet with people. We're available at any time.
Sir, what's the next? When is the BZA meeting?
BZA meets next Wednesday, and
Okay.
then their next meeting would be January 8th.
Okay. I don't know what the rest of the commission thinks on this, but from my standpoint, we're a land use body, and that's what we're looking at on this docket. However, I think there needs to be a little bit of time to work with the neighborhood. So I think it behooves us to postpone a decision today so that there's sufficient time that you can discuss with the neighbors, and then meet at our next meeting and then that way you're ready for the BZM in January. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great project. I think it's going to be impactful. One thing before I actually go further, could you clarify the 24 extra?
It is not extra.
Okay, so no extra capacity. So we can get that fixed in the staff report, which I think would be helpful as you talk to neighbors. I'm certainly empathetic to Matt Abbott and the amount that they've invested in the area and the number of tenants they need to speak to. And in the spirit of having good communication in a project of this scope, if you all are willing to take the extra time, the extra few weeks, I do think it will make for just a better long-term situation. Again, I think it's, if you all said that you absolutely, for some reason, could not accommodate the extra time, it's a project that I think I'd want to support right now. But if you're willing to work with your neighbors, I think it's the best thing to do.
I don't think 2 weeks concerns us. I think we just want to make sure it doesn't become an ongoing thing for extended periods of time, because then we get into issues with some of our funding. We have to make sure by a certain point we use it or we lose it. And so 2 weeks isn't the concern. It's if 2 weeks goes to 4 weeks, goes to 6 weeks, and there's always one more thing. And I think as long as we have the assurance, we will respond to any neighborhood concern that is reasonable. And if 2 weeks is that time allows that, and we can work that through, I'm all for it. If it becomes one of these things where then there's one more thing and one more thing, that's what concerns us.
My hope is that without increased capacity, you all are offering a lot of great improvements to the services and the community. The indoor area, the courtyard area, I think is a huge improvement the neighbors are going to be excited about. The recessed queuing area is an improvement that I think neighbors will be excited about. The improved facade, I think that there's a lot you all are offering that the community will be excited about. So I appreciate your openness to delaying.
So my understanding would be we would maybe reconvene at the third Wednesday version of this CPC hearing to kind of check back in.
We would look at a continuance to December 18th.
Okay.
Is it 2 weeks enough for both parties? Because otherwise we're gonna, like you mentioned,
in reality, we do need to talk to, we think it's fair to talk to all of our tenants about this and get their feedback. I mean, we just found that out about this a few days ago, and coordinating with up to 50 people, getting their feedback, getting everyone in a room this time of year. It's not the easiest time of year. Quite frankly, 2 weeks is tight. It's not ideal.
Yeah, it might just behoove you to have a neighborhood meeting of sort so that you can invite those folks. And
I do want to be clear that the special use permit process was followed to the letter, with us having a meeting with the Crossroads Neighborhood Association and a public engagement meeting, which Mr. Abbott and his associate was present. We did have the discussion. So, and I also just want to clarify if it all tenants or if it's relevant tenants in the area. Again, like Eric said, we are more than happy to talk with anyone. I just want to make sure that we stay within the applicable bounds. So
I think that, the meeting needs to be held with those that own the parcels.
Okay.
Okay.
But we can.
Can I
work
have
with-
a,
Also suggest, Mr. Chair, that on the neighborhood agreement, there actually be a eyeball to eyeball meeting between.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. You're going to have to speak into the microphone.
Good point. Sorry. I've said there should be on the neighborhood agreement, I think, representatives of the neighbors in a person-to-person meeting with them and a discussion of what those elements of the agreement are.
Yeah, that's kind of beyond this committee.
it is.
Yeah, to be clear, so what I would like to see with a continuance, which we'll make as part of the motion, is that you all take the extra time to meet with these property owners and tenants who are interested. We are not interested in seeing a community agreement. That's not in our scope, and that won't be something that we're gonna, or that I won't weigh as part of our decision.
Understood.
Respectfully, sir, I just bring that up because they said they would do that.
I have a question of clarification because I think I've heard two different things. I've heard that you did have a meeting with the Crossroads neighborhood,
Correct, yes.
and then, hold on. And then, Mr. Abbott, are you not involved with the Crossroads neighborhood?
They had a meeting with the Crossroads Neighborhood Association. I was
Remember that?
I was not at that meeting. I did attend a meeting where I was the only person there. And when I asked questions, they didn't have answers to most of my questions. And we asked simple questions like, out of the people that,
I don't want
What's that?
that kind of detail. I'm just trying to confirm because I think I'm hearing two entities that want to be addressed. The Crossroads neighborhood, and now you're coming forward as property owner in the area
Mhm.
that wants to have a meeting. Is that not what I've heard this morning?
That's correct.
Mhm.
Okay. So they're willing to have a meeting. Are you willing to have a meeting with Crossroads and everyone else? Or are you just saying with Mr. Abbott and his tenants?
We'll meet with anybody that wants to meet with us. We have already had the meeting with the Crossroads Neighborhood Association. And it was a very positive meeting. And that meeting, there were 53 attendants on there. Now, the other agenda was adding parking to the Crossroads, so more people were probably interested in the parking discussion, but we were the first piece of that. And the only question we got was, were we changing the nature, were we adding more people? But mostly we got positive feedback of really liking the new facility, the queuing area.
Okay, so just as I stopped the other person, I don't want
yep,
details.
okay.
I'm just trying to clarify that I'm hearing two entities that want to be addressed. And I was trying to confirm that Mr. Abbott was part of the Crossroads Association.
I am in the Crossroads Association, but that wasn't the meeting that I attended. I attended the one-on-one meeting at their facility.
Okay, so they have made accommodations to address your concerns.
No, they couldn't answer my questions. I mean, if they can't answer questions and they host a meeting and they can't give me answers, I don't know how that's accommodating my
Well,
concerns.
they accommodated what's required under the code. That's right.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Satisfied?
Yeah, I just,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. With that, let's make a motion, please.
Yep. So again, I think we have a unique situation. I completely understand you all went through all the proper channels. I think it's rare that we have a landlord that has done a lot in the neighborhood and has so many tenants to coordinate that in a neighborhood that people really care a lot. So it looks like a great project. I'm gonna move to continue it to December 18th without fee to allow for additional time to work with Matt Abbott and his tenants just to communicate more what was before us in terms of the staff report. We'd like to see amended so that it doesn't show additional capacity to reflect the actual building as planned, but we don't need to see, we're not looking to see anything further.
I got a motion. I need a.
Second.
Is that the motion? Second?
Gotta say, okay, so I got a motion for continuance to December 18th with the intention of having a public meeting with Mr. Abbott and his tenants, as well as clarifying the staff report and the actual number of tenants in the space. So Margaret, can you take roll call on that motion, please?
Beasley,
Aye.
Crowell,
Aye.
Enders.
Aye.
Hassick.
Aye.
Lynch.
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
Okay, it looks like the motion passes and we'll see you again on December 18th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to docket item number 3, please.
Number 3 is case CD SUP 2024-43, a request to approve a special use permit for an existing school to add additional impervious vehicular use area in District R80 on about 9.6 acres generally located at 5704 North Northwood Road.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Morning.
As stated, docket item number 3 is a special use permit for Southeast Elementary School located at 5704 Northwood Road. Site is generally located in the Northland in the Park Hill School District. And here is the subject site highlighted in yellow. The site plan reviewed by staff as provided by the applicant shows 2 areas of change to the existing school. The largest change will be the addition of a vehicular drive to the existing parking lot, and it will be reconfigured as a parent drop-off pickup area that will be separate from the bus drop-off pickup, which I'll show you in another slide. And then a building addition of just over 1,000 square feet on the west side of the building. We have the building elevations that will match the existing building. And then you can see the circulation of the car stacking. The reconfiguration of this parking area will reduce the number of spaces from 135 to 106, with a potential future expansion of this drive if necessary, further out to the west. Have the landscape plan, which will provide screening of the parking area. And then a few street views of the site. This is the existing drive located at the southern portion of the site. And then this is where the proposed drive will be. You can see there's already a curb cut here, and it will wind up this hill to get to the parking area. And then just another view of the site looking straight on. And staff is recommending approval subject to conditions. And I just wanted to highlight one of the conditions will be for the applicant to seek a variance from the Board of Zoning Adjustment for the number of required bicycle parking spaces. And I can take any questions.
All right, any questions from the commission to city staff?
No.
Okay. All right, welcome the applicant then. Good morning.
Good morning. David Wood with Caw Valley Engineering. I'm the civil engineer on the project. And with me is Mr. Jim Rich with the Park Hill School District. I don't have a whole lot to add to Genevieve's presentation. I think she kind of illustrated what we intend to do here, the reasons for doing it to kind of improve traffic circulation on the campus. We have reviewed the conditions of the project. They're acceptable for what we're trying to do, and we will request the variance for the bike parking. And just to clarify on that, the existing school has bike parking today. The school district kind of identified the needs that they have for bike parking, so we're kind of working with what they need versus what the code stipulates. Happy to address any questions.
Any thoughts on when the future loop will be constructed?
At the moment, it's kind of an as-needed improvement. The circulation for the parent pickup and drop-off, the pickup location is not changing on this. The difference is that today you'd have to enter in on the south side of the campus and kind of loop through the existing parking lot. The proposed change kind of separates the buses and the cars to opposite sides of the campus and allows us to double stack the inbound lanes into campus. So we're matching the capacity that is kind of on site today, but this does kind of give us that ability to increase capacity if necessary in the future, due to student growth or changes in busing policies and those kind of things that seem to impact school operations on a yearly basis.
Okay. Any questions from the commission to the applicant?
How soon would you start and about how long would it take to complete the project?
The intent would be to start the addition this spring. The improvements to the parking lot will begin, assuming we get permits in a timely manner, as soon as school lets out, about the end of May, with the intent of having the parking lot operational by August before students come back. The landscaping, those kind of things tend to lag on a little bit till about September, October, when you get that kind of preferred growing season for plant establishment.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? At this time, we'll open it up for public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket item number 3, please come forward or raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you will be called upon.
We do not have any hands raised online.
Okay, we'll close public testimony then. Anything else to add at this time?
Nope.
All right, that will close testimony, and there's nothing to discuss. I'll take a motion.
Chair Crowley moved to approve docket item number 3 with conditions.
Second.
Motion and a second for approval of docket item number 3. Margaret can take roll call on that motion, please.
Beasley,
Aye.
Prowl,
Aye.
Enders,
Aye.
Hassick,
Aye.
Lynch,
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
All right, looks like the motion passes then. What do we got? 3, 4, 6, 6 to none. Thank you. All right, let's move to docket item 4, please.
Case CD SUP 2024-44, a request to approve a special use permit to allow the continued temporary use of one modular building in District R 7.5 on about 10 acres, generally located at 7100 North Chatham Avenue.
Docket item number 4 will probably look very familiar. This hopefully is the last of the modular buildings for before the completion of the new elementary school in the Park Hill School District. And so for this particular case, we're looking at Chin Elementary at 7100 North Chatham, located in the Northland in Park Hill School District. Site highlighted in yellow between 71st Street and 70th. And as you've all seen before, section 88-370-03 authorizes the city planning and development director to request that a temporary use be processed as a special use if it is on the site longer than staff is able to approve a temporary use or structure. The structure is existing on the site and is highlighted in the orange dash line here. This is the site plan provided by the applicant, which complies with code and setbacks. Typical elevations of a modular building, and then some street views of the site. It's really tucked back behind the school. This is from the parking lot area, and this is from the intersection of Chatham and 71st. And staff is recommending approval with conditions. The single condition being the expiration of this special use permit in August of 2025, when all of the modular buildings for the elementary schools are expected to be removed with the completion of the new elementary school. I can take any questions.
So it's already existing, the modular building is? Okay. Any questions for city staff? All right, let's welcome the applicant then. Good morning.
Good morning, Ryan Walters, Hollis Miller Architects. I don't really have much more to add here other than when Angeline Washington is complete, I guess it would be summer, this coming summer. This is slated to be removed, and what we're really trying to do is comply fully with all processes and tracking mechanisms that the city would like for these sorts of buildings.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? All right, let's open it up for public testimony then. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket item number 4, please come forward or raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you will be called upon.
There are no hands raised online.
Okay, so we'll close public testimony then. Anything else to add at this time? Okay, we'll close testimony and I'll take a motion, please.
Well, thanks for coming in. And Chair Crowley, I move to approve docket item number 4 with its single condition.
Second.
Motion and a second for approval of docket item number 4. Margaret, can you take roll call on that motion, please?
Beasley,
Aye.
Crowell,
Aye.
Enders.
Aye.
Hasek.
Aye.
Lynch.
Aye.
Halilio.
Aye.
Looks like the motion passes 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck there with that. All right, let's move on to docket item number 5, please.
Case CD SUP 2024-40, a request to approve a special use permit for a private golf course renovation in an R 7.5 zoning district on about 131.654 acres, generally located at 8200 Hillcrest Road.
The applicant available on this one?
I'm promoting Amy Grant online.
Okay.
We're waiting to swear her in.
I'm sorry?
No, we don't swear people.
Oh, okay.
Wait on you, man.
Okay. Okay, good morning, board. I'm Alec Gustafson, Development Management Division. This is docket item number 5, CD SUP 2024-40. It's for Hillcrest Golf Course SUP. The site is located just south of Swope Park, west of Raytown. It's zoned R75, and it's an old golf course. It's been there since, I believe, 1915. It was established prior to the annexation into the city of Kansas City in 1958. I had to do a little history on this case beforehand, before the pre-application meeting. So what I found is that it's just in the 80s, there were 3 conditional use permits to allow the construction of the golf cart storage building, to amend the previously approved plan for the country club, basically making a change to that golf cart maintenance building, and then even more modifications to the existing golf cart storage building. These were all just CUPs in the 80s. This is the May 2021 view of the clubhouse from Hillcrest Road. And this is what we currently see in August of 2024. The entire golf course is undergoing a renovation, reconfiguring of all the holes, and rebuilding its clubhouse. So they gave me a plethora of different plans, everything that is required in the director's minimum submittal requirements. We have the stream buffer, tree preservation plan, which did not require tree mitigation, the continuous tree canopy to be preserved, and undisturbed stream buffers. This is the new layout of the actual 18-hole golf course. You can get a better view in your staff report if you choose to find out what the whole layout is, if you ever plan to go there. And we have kind of a little bit more of a site plan with added parking and 1 maintenance building to remain. This is just more of their site layout. And then here they have a little bit closer view of the site plan with the parking summary of 152 parking spaces provided, with 6 ADA spaces provided. So 158 total spaces, with an overflow parking lot that had somewhere around 30 extra spaces. They have 1 additional maintenance building that is being proposed to be built, the north maintenance building, and then the southern maintenance building along Hillcrest Road is existing and is intended to remain. These are their grading plans. A little bit more grading plan, but a closer view of the site. The utility plan. And then here's the beginning of their landscape plan. Plenty of a vehicular screening along Hillcrest Road, which is what we require. More landscape, just a zoomed in view telling you what exactly we have here on the site. And then here's their initial layout. So they have golf cart storage on the lowest level of the clubhouse, along with storage, let's see, coolers, offices, restrooms. This is the first floor. And this would be the roof with solar panels on top. Here are the elevations. Kind of sticking to the same similar design, but kind of an upgrade to what they had previously. And then more elevations and their outdoor lighting plan. So the specific review criteria, I just wanted to highlight that there may be a need for a variance to the position of the accessory buildings on the subject site. And then there was conversation in the hearing or in the process leading up to this hearing about public sidewalks. 88-450-03A basically lets us know that we can only request sidewalks when it's any platted lot where sidewalks have not been constructed. This is not, they're not proposing a new plat. This is just a site plan. So the Development Management Division cannot make a suggestion for sidewalks. It would be up to any sort of discussion as pertains to sidewalk would be something that the City Planning Commission or City Council would make a motion on, but this case will not go to City Council. So it would be up to you guys. And I just am letting you know that this will be hopefully a discussion topic. To move on to talking about the variance that I discussed in the specific review criteria. The criteria here is accessory buildings and structures are prohibited in front and street side yards, i.e. they may not be closer to the street than the principal building. And as you can see in the site plan, these are just me defining what side and front property line is, but essentially the proposed maintenance buildings are closer to Hillcrest Road, which is the side street, than the primary structure. So, if we're looking at the definitions for front yard and side yard, the front yard being the front yard of a corner lot consisting of one platted lot will be adjacent to the street on which the lot has its least dimension. That's just a code way of saying that the shortest street frontage is the front yard property line, meaning that from the clubhouse south to East 83rd Street would be the front yard, making from the clubhouse east to Hillcrest Road, the side yard, which is where we can talk about the fact that the buildings are in the street side yard. That would be the need for the variance. And any other conversation as it pertains to sidewalks, there are not any conditions in the plan conditions that relate to the need for sidewalks. So staff is recommending approval with conditions. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. And
Okay. I'm not sure I understood the sidewalk comment. If you're looking at the site plan, you're saying they need more sidewalks, or?
no, that is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the Development Management Division does not really have necessarily a stance on the sidewalks. I just know that it was something that was talked about quite extensively in DRC and moving forward. It's not required here.
So you're talking more along the street frontage.
Right. It would not be required as far as development management is concerned, as far as zoning is concerned.
Okay, so it's not required as part of development management? Okay.
Then, where does this go next?
BZA.
Doesn't go to council? Okay, staff report says council, that's why I wasn't sure.
Oh, yeah, yep. That's a typo on my end.
Cool.
Any other questions for the city staff? All right, let's welcome the applicant then.
Good morning. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. My name is Amy Grant. My address is 900 West 48th Place, Kansas City, Missouri. We do have a couple members of our development team here available for you should you have more questions, but did just want to acknowledge that we've appreciated working with staff on this application. Very excited to revitalize and refresh, as you saw in some of the pictures, some very needed and some very exciting upgrades to continue to make this a great property asset in the future as a golf course. We're happy to go into any of the discussion points. Yes, we did talk about sidewalks, but it was really more in the fact of what Alec referred to, in that they're not required because we're not platting. But I'll just add a little more substance and flavor in that when you look at Hillcrest Road and 83rd Street, these are 2-lane, unimproved, very much fit the character of the neighborhood when you look at a golf course and a cemetery and the things that are in the area. So obviously, if the city at some point in the future felt that Hillcrest needed to become a fully improved curb, gutter, sidewalk, that would probably be the appropriate time to talk about whether or not that would be necessary or not. So I think Alec was just highlighting to you that normally they would look for something like that in traditional redevelopment, but not necessarily required with this golf course piece. But aside from that, again, we have several members of the team available. We are agreeable with conditions 1 through 22 and are happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for the applicant?
In regards to the existing maintenance building and then the newly proposed one, the existing one's screened pretty substantially. Will the new one be screened similarly?
It will have screening from Hillcrest. I hope you all can appreciate the buildings will be refinished, and the existing will be refinished in a way to be looking a little better, as well as the new. Unfortunately, when you redevelop in an existing site, we're pretty constrained with where those things can go. But yes, they will have adequate landscaping along Hillcrest Road.
Do you have any elevations of what those will look like, both the new one and then when you renovate the existing one, since those are, as we were talking about, facing Hillcrest and close to the road?
We had not gone into full design on those yet. We just knew generally where they were going to need to be located, but we could definitely share those with staff, obviously, as we go through final approvals prior to permitting.
Yeah, I don't have any concerns about, if the screening remains there. Clearly, they're not the type of facade or, that we'd want to see on a, facing a road necessarily, depending upon the building and the location. And so I think that if you can just work with staff on it, so that way, like if you were to clear all the brush there and then put 2 new maintenance buildings, it might not be what anyone had envisioned or hoped for.
Sure. I mean, we definitely will follow. I know the ordinance has certain design standards in place for buildings like that, and we'll definitely work with staff to follow those.
And staff feels good that we don't need to condition anything there. Great.
All right, any other questions for applicant? Okay. All right, this time let's open it up for public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket item 5, please come forward or raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you will be called upon.
There are no hands raised online.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close public testimony at this time. So, Ms. Grant, anything else to add?
No, thank you.
Okay. So at this time, we'll close testimony and speak amongst the commission, or I'll take a motion.
Chair Crowley, move to approve docket item number 5 with conditions.
Second.
Motion and a second for approval of docket item number 5. So Margaret, can you take roll call on that motion, please?
Beasley,
Aye.
Crowell,
Aye.
Enders.
Aye.
Kasich.
Aye.
Lynch.
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
All right, looks like the motion passes 6-0. Thank you, and
Thank
good luck
you.
as you move forward.
Appreciate it.
Yep. I'd like to take like a 5-minute break if we can. Okay, so let's do that. It's 10:50 right now. So 5 minutes, that gets us up to 11, right? 10:50 plus 5. So let's come back at 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's reconvene our meeting here. It's 11 o'clock. And so let's start with docket item number 6, right?
Number 6 is case CD SUP 2024-45, a request to approve a special use permit to allow for temporary modular buildings on the Brookside Charter School grounds in an R-5 zoning district on about 2.222 acres, generally located at 1815 East 63rd Street.
The applicant available.
Applicant is online.
Good morning.
Good morning. Let's, we're going to go through the staff presentation first, and then we'll talk to the applicant after.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. So we have docket item number 6, CD SUP 2024-45. This is for Brookside Charter School modular office buildings at 1815 East 63rd Street. The site is located just south of Blue Little Park, kind of in Midtown, I guess, and on East 63rd Street and Woodland Avenue. It has these 3 zoning districts, but we go based on the most restrictive when it pertains to zoning. So this is kind of where the site's supposed to be. The basis of the modular offices is their interior design work going on in the school, and they need to house 4 teachers in these office buildings, or in these modular office buildings for the time being while their classrooms are being modified. This is just a little bit of controlling related cases. This is a permit that has not been approved to this pending this special use permit. So I'll go through a little bit of the case history just to make this make a little more sense. So on July 5th, 2024, a pre-application meeting was held informing the applicant that a special use permit would be needed to place the modular office buildings on site. On the 30th of July, that same permit, CRBC 2024-40103, was submitted for review and failed because of the pending special use permit. Sometime in August or September, the modular buildings were placed without this special use permit and without the approval of that building permit. And then they submitted 2 more times with that same permit number, which was then subsequently failed because they were pending this special use permit. October 28th, this special use permit was then applied for, beginning the cycle 12.1, getting us here to this hearing. And then the permit case was then submitted a 4th time and failed because they're still pending this special use permit before you today. This was the view of Brookside Charter School in September 2022 from Google Street View. And this is September 2024 with the modular buildings already placed. This is just the site plan of the general area, the parking and the basketball court, playground area in the school. The site plans as well in the staff report go into detail about the actual interior design work. I left that out of the presentation because we're here to talk about the modular office buildings. So this is the site plan showing where the modular office buildings are to be. There's a 200-foot path to the nearest restrooms. The occupant load of each trailer is 4 occupants. That's all they intend to have in there. And then the office buildings will be on site till April 30th, 2026, as the interior design work is going on inside the school. Just standard modular office building elevations. Just their layouts of the modular buildings. Footings. And these are the ramps that are leading up to the modular office buildings. The only specific review criteria that I felt was important to highlight here is that the permit would be approved for 2 years, pending the BZA's approval. So that concludes my staff report, and we're recommending approval with conditions.
Okay. Since we got radiators in here, I think we got to bring back the projector. thing.
See what I can do for next time.
Okay, any questions for city staff?
I have a comment or slash question. Having seen a couple of these recently, I would love to, as a commission, recommend to council a way to make these modular buildings for schools, something that is done administratively, if possible.
Agree.
Maybe difficult. Can write that down and talk to the director next time we have a meeting, something like that, but.
I think it's, I mean, fully, you know, I don't think any of us are surprised that someone misunderstood the process and, you know, put buildings down, and we aren't making the process better by failing them 4 times and then having them go through this process here. It's no one benefits from it. So I think we could go ahead and just acknowledge it and fix it and make it an administrative process that's a lot easier.
I think the big thing is making sure that they have that public involvement piece, which presented, whereas if it's administrative approval, you may not have that. It just happens.
Yeah. I mean, I think since most of these things are temporary by the very nature of it, you know,
sure.
If council's willing to do it, I think that'd be an improvement.
Yeah, I'll bring it up to.
Cool.
Director.
Thanks.
Okay, any questions for city staff? Anything else? All right, let's welcome the applicant then.
Good morning. My name is Dominic Spatafor. My address is, my personal address is 5627 Northwest 82nd Street, Kansas City, Missouri. I work for ACI Boland Architects in conjunction with Turner Construction, and we are representing Brookside Charter School. First of all, we would like to humbly apologize for making a mess of the process of getting these things out there. We were brought in after the process had been started by the contractor, and it was seen as something that was much less of a deal than what it was believed to be. And so we're coming in and wanting to do all of the right things and be transparent about the situation that's out there. So I appreciate everybody's understanding. And again, we apologize at not trying to flout any rules, just previously didn't understand them all. So with that, the summary is pretty straightforward. We've got a number of offices out there, and it's in conjunction with some renovation that's had been planning to take place inside, but really it's driven by the need to house students in a classroom that's inside the building now. And in order to do that, we needed to move teachers' offices outside. So these are 4 offices that are being used by teachers that are interventionists. So speech therapists, PT therapists that have an office and a desk space and storage space in these temporary buildings, and then they do those work with the children inside of the actual permanent constructed building. We are asking for this until April, at which point school will be out in April of 26. At that point in time, we believe that we will have a new building opened south of this site. The building is currently being designed and will be going through this process as well, starting probably next month. And so we have a very clear sunset on the need and use of these buildings. They're not intended for the expansion of services, but just needing to have adequate space inside the building that we have now.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant? All right, seeing none, let's open it up for public testimony then. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket item number 6, please come forward or raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you will be called upon.
There are no hands raised online.
Okay, so we'll close public testimony then. Anything else you'd like to add regarding this case, Dominic?
No, sir. Well, we certainly appreciate the input of the staff. The 4 failed submittals in there were actually the permit reviews, and obviously the SUP was part of it, but we had a couple of other things that we had to clarify and get right. So we're trying to get right by everybody and have very much appreciated their understanding and work. They do a lot of work, and it's not always easy, and we make it hard sometimes. So appreciate their hard work.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll close testimony and speak amongst the commission. If there's nothing to discuss, I'll take a motion, please.
Chair Crowell, I move to approve docket item number 6 with conditions.
Second.
Motion and a second for approval of docket item number 6. Margaret, can you take roll call on that motion, please?
Beasley?
Aye.
Crowell?
Aye.
Enders?
Aye.
Hasek?
Aye.
Lynch?
Aye.
Puglia?
Aye.
Looks like the motion passes and 6-0. Appreciate it.
Thank you to the board.
Yep. All right, let's move on to docket item number 7.
Number 7 is case CD CPC 2024-168, amending Chapter 88, the Zoning and Development Code by enacting a new section to be known as Section 88-586, Demolition Review, and amending any other necessary sections of Chapter 88.
Good morning. My name's Brad Wolf. I'm with City Planning Development Historic Preservation. And before you is a proposed text amendment to add a new process to review demolitions throughout the city. Really, the goal of this, we've had a number of.
You're not sharing your screen.
I'm not sharing it. Okay, thank you. Good. Okay, thanks. Pardon me. So this process was basically in response to a number of last minute local designations. We've had basically where a building is proposed for demolition, but no reuse is proposed at that point. This would basically allow for a standardized review process to allow for public comment on any potential historic building. Generally, we basically outlined 3 processes. We did allow for some general exemptions from demolition review. One, the local listing, there's already a demolition review process, so that would follow our standard process. Buildings less than 50 years old, the reason 50 years was chosen, it's the National Register of Historic Places criteria when you start looking at whether a building meets the criteria to be historic. Accessory buildings less than 200 square feet, since we don't require a demolition permit for those anyway. So sometimes buildings have formal determinations from the State Historic Preservation Office. If that determination is less than 4 years old and says it's not eligible, they would be exempt also. And then we'd also exempt dangerous buildings. So those would not actually be going through the demolition review process. The next type of process is basically a staff review process. This is more of an administrative process, but we do give notice to the commission and to the neighborhood association that staff would be recommending approval of a demolition without any review. And these would basically be properties that staff felt do not meet the criteria for historic listing. That way, we would not have the docket of the Preservation Commission filled up with lots of properties that actually would not meet the criteria. And then the last one, if a staff feels the property would be eligible for listing, it would be presented to the Historic Preservation Commission on our regular monthly docket. Basically, they have up to 45 days to have reviewed on the docket. And then if the commission finds it's eligible for listing or is actually already listed on the National Register of Historic Places, then the commission can delay it for another 45 days. So the max delay would be 90 days from application. And really, this is just to allow a point for the public and the commission to discuss with the property owner future plans and if there's any other options. In terms of the process, we did do the standard public engagement process. We did receive a few letters of support that we attached on the back of the staff report from the public engagement, and no opposition at this point. and I'm open for your questions.
I have a quick question. You had mentioned somewhere that there's an exception for dangerous buildings. What constitutes the designation of a dangerous building?
It's basically laid out in chapter 56. So basically the neighborhood preservation department, dangerous buildings division does that formal declaration. So
The reason I had asked is that I want to make sure that we're not creating a situation where people who own said buildings put it in a situation where it could be designated as building or as dangerous intentionally so that they can get an exception to that.
no, I understand the concern with that. Hopefully properties are turned in for property maintenance violations first so they can get fixed before they become dangerous. That would be the ultimate goal of any of that neighborhood preservation department in particular. So.
Any other questions for city staff?
Can you help contextualize this for me with a example, real or theoretical?
Sure. For example, say someone was proposing, I don't know if you're familiar with the Santa Fe Place neighborhood. Basically, it's 27th Prospect down to 31st. It's listed on the National Register of Historic Places. There's a number of great homes in there. Right now, if somebody went in to pull a demolition permit for any of those, they could just demolish it without any notice to the public. This would allow for that notice to go out and maybe find somebody that could potentially rehab the building. And for properties that aren't listed, for example, the more recent ones like 31st and Main with a streetcar, they would have had a little more notice and may be able to work with the owner before they had already pulled their demolition permit to try to stop it quickly. So
in theory, the additional notice will be extremely predictable. So someone buying a building or interested in buying a building with the intent of demolition would have good clarity as to how that affects their timeline.
Yeah. And was part of the idea behind this, was create predictability and kind of a set time.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, with that, let's open it up for public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket item number 7, please come forward or raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you will be called upon.
We do not have any hands raised online.
Okay, so with that, we'll close public testimony then. Anything else to add, Mr. Wolf, on this?
Just that this actually, I'm sorry, I forgot one thing. This is also one of the objectives of the KC Spirit Playbook was to enact one of these ordinances. So it's supported by our comp plan.
Okay. Got another question. Right now, what does the demolition process look like for something that's doesn't fit one of the existing practices? And I guess primarily interested in how long it takes.
Usually they initially do by stopping all the utilities. So, and then get traffic control and whatever else is necessary and any abatement that's required. So it can take a little while depending on how quickly the contractor is moving. But for a single family home, that can go relatively fast because, I mean, once you actually get the demolition permit, it only takes a day or two to come down. So I would say that's a good question. I'm not sure exactly how long that would take. It probably depends on the size of the project and the nature of any environmental contaminants, but.
And then has the interest in this been primarily about single family homes or is it all?
No, any type, even larger buildings that may be converted to, housing, was one of the thoughts too. So.
Yep. Cool. Thanks.
All right. With that, we'll close testimony and I'll take a motion, please.
Chair Crowell, I move to approve docket item number 7.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for approval of docket item number 7. Margaret, can you take a roll call on that motion, please?
Beasley,
Aye.
Crawl,
Aye.
Enders.
Aye.
Hasek.
Aye.
Lynch.
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Motion passes. All right, with that, let's move on to docket item number 9.
9.1, case CD CPC 2024-162, a request to approve an amendment to the Midtown Plaza area plan from residential low density to mixed-use neighborhood on about 0.16 acres, generally located on East 34th Street between Gillum Road and Holmes Street. And 9.2 is case CD CPC 2024-161, a request to approve a rezoning without plan from District R 1.5 to District B 1-1 on about 0.16 acres, generally located on East 34th Street between Gillum Road and Holmes Street.
All right, good morning, Larissa Chambi, City Planning and Development. As was stated, this is docket item 9.1 and 9.2, and I can share my screen. All right, so the area plan amendment and rezoning without plan is located at 608 East 34th Street. This is the general location of the subject property within Kansas City, Missouri. And as you can see from this map, there are 3 properties. Those have been combined at the request of the city. So it will show up as just one property for the future projects. The current zoning is R-1.5, and the applicant is proposing to rezone the property to B1-1. There's a B4-5 just to the north, and then residential surrounding the rest of the site. The Midtown Plaza area plan also lists this as residential low density, and the applicant is proposing to amend the area plan to mixed use neighborhood. And you can see that mixed use neighborhood just to the north of the site. There is the George B. Logan Elementary School, which is the Academy Lafayette. That's just to the south. The applicant did provide plans for the proposed structure. However, since this is an area plan amendment and a rezoning without plans, staff did not review those plans. The applicant will still have to come through and get city approval for those plans in the future. There's a few criteria for the rezoning, and I won't go through all of them. However, I did want to just mention E through G. So E, suitability of the subject property for the use it has been restricted to under the zoning regulations. As you can see from these historical pictures in this slide and the next, the site was clearly intended to be used for a commercial purpose. That is why the B1-1 zoning district will fit the proposed use in the future. F, how long the subject property has remained vacant. And as you can see from this, it does look like those buildings have been vacant, and to staff's knowledge, it has been vacant for approximately 10 years. And if the rezoning will detrimentally affect nearby properties, this rezoning will not detrimentally affect the nearby properties. It allows for uses that are typically found in neighborhood settings and that contribute to the comfort and convenience of the surrounding properties. So based on the intensity designator, which is that -1, that limits the height of the building. So it will match what is currently existing throughout the neighborhood. And with that, the recommendations are approval without conditions for both the area plan amendment and the rezoning. And I can answer any questions if you have them.
Okay, any questions for city staff?
Yeah, I've got one. And then also with the street stuff that we've been talking about, if we can change Gillum Road and Gillum Plaza, because that's crazy confusing. I had no idea. I could not place that. Did you all know that?
Mm-hmm.
So bizarre. Anyway, the state, I recall something about the state allowing for certain business use out of homes, but that's if it's a primary residence. Is that correct?
For a home occupation?
Yeah. So that has nothing to, that wouldn't, okay.
No.
Just wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? Looking down there, you, Commissioner Beasley?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, let's welcome the applicant then. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Ford Miller with Oppenheimer Law. I'm joined by Catherine Ross and one of the members of our property owner, Keith Andrews. we are here to showcase our, well, Keith's project and ask that you approve this rezoning so that they can bring their plan, which is a coffee shop and bakery concept, to serve the members of this community. Keith lives in the neighborhood, just 2 blocks away. He's a member of Hyde Park, and this is his home, as well as a place he would like to make his business. And the bakery and coffee shop concept was met with resounding support from the public engagement that we've held across multiple meetings. The actual public engagement meeting for in anticipation of this hearing on November 25th was I'd say lightly attended because in the weeks prior to that meeting, Keith and Steve had held multiple meetings to meet with the Hyde Park Neighborhood Association members to continue to talk about the corner shops and neighborhood amenities that they'd like to bring in to this neighborhood. The B1 zoning district excludes many of the other uses that would be incompatible with a neighborhood corner store setting here. So if Le Buzz Cafe and Johnny Bake's Bakery move along in the future under the B1 zoning classification, they are likely to be replaced with other neighborhood serving interests like tailors, restaurants, but nothing like car washes and other things that are going to generate noxious impacts. So I think I'd like to receive any questions you might have.
Okay. Any questions from the commission to the applicant?
The bakery and coffee store, are these 2 separate uses, or is it supposed to be under one sort of general roof?
It would be 2 separate uses.
Okay.
There would be 2 independent.
And the 2 different buildings that are in the site. Okay.
But they would be joined with a common seating area.
Okay. Okay.
I should also add that the eastern
Yes.
side, 612, was granted a special use permit for the coffee shop use in 2017. That was case number 14876 SU. So that was granted for the coffee shop use, but that would be limited to that side of the overall attached building structure. So the 604 side of the building would not benefit from that special use permit. And the owners have also purchased the detached garage in the rear of the building, which needed to be added, and those uses need to be consolidated.
Okay. All right, anything else or any other questions from the commission? So at this time, we'll open it up for public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket items 9.1 or 9.2, please come forward or raise your hand using the Zoom feature, and you will be called upon.
We do have someone who has been promoted to panelist. It just says iPhone. So iPhone, you can unmute and turn on your camera, and please identify yourself with your name.
Thank you, Christopher Koch, current Hyde Park Neighborhood Association president.
Okay.
I just wanted to attend and say the neighborhood is in support of the proposed rezoning. And we heard no negative feedback for the proposal.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
There
Anybody
are no
else?
other hands raised online.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close public testimony then. Anything else to add at this time?
I don't think so. Thanks for your consideration, commissioners.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and close testimony, speak amongst the commission. If there's nothing to discuss, I will take a motion, please.
Chair Crowell, I move.
I knew it.
You knew one was coming. I'm sorry. I was sitting rereading the two docket numbers, and Larissa, when you presented, you said that the actual building plan was not considered at this time.
Correct.
But I'm listening to different things they're saying, and one of the owners, I believe I heard him said part of his residence would be in part of the building. I misheard you on that. Okay.
Will be no one living there.
Okay.
This is
You're
for business
just
only.
emphasizing you live in the area.
I live in the area.
Okay.
I don't live in the building.
So that made me start thinking, well, are we tearing this down or are we rehabbing them since you didn't actually review the actual plans? We're just talking about the zoning.
Correct. Just the zoning.
Okay. That's all I wanted to clear my mind on.
Okay,
Okay,
Thank
I'm
you.
good.
Chair Crowell, I move to approve docket items 9.1 and 9.2, both without conditions.
second. I've got a motion and a second for approval of docket items 9.1 and 9.2. Margaret, can you take roll call on that motion, please?
Beasley,
Aye.
Crowell,
Aye.
Enders.
Aye.
Hasek.
Aye.
Lynch,
Aye.
Padilla.
All right, looks like the motion passes in 6-0. Thanks for coming in and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
All right, I think we're on our last docket. Do we need to go to lunch first?
Long lunch break.
Just teasing. Okay. Let's go to docket item number 10.
Number 10, CDCPC 2024-180, to consider approval of the Block 138 PIEA General Development Plan and declare the area blighted and unsanitary and in need of redevelopment and rehabilitation pursuant to the Missouri Planned Industrial Expansion Authority Law 100.300 to 100.620 on about 0.84 acres in an area generally bordered by West 14th Street on the north, West Truman Road on the south, Main Street on the east, and Baltimore Avenue on the west.
Good afternoon. Oh, sorry. Afternoon, Olafo Agbaji City Planning and Development. And we are here to talk about the Block 138 PIA General Development Plan. So I bring it up.
I think you need it on the other monitor too, also.
I got this by now. Working?
Yep.
Got it.
Ooh, getting good at it. That's dangerous.
You're not presenting enough. You need more practice up here, right?
Yep. All right, I think we can just roll with this. Again, general location of this, okay, with me is Mr. David McCoubry and Jim Porter. And this general location is just where the arrow is pointing, south loop of downtown. Again, this is in the area highlighted in yellow.
I don't see that on, we're still on your,
Yeah, it's not advanced.
I need to advance the slide.
I'll stop share and reshare. Let's see if it works.
There we go.
It's not playing. It's a 5 minutes, no, 2-minute presentation.
Click on that. PowerPoint. Close out of this. Go back into that.
It's gonna work, promise.
We know.
Have full faith.
There
Just
we
go
go.
to settings.
I got it. Yep.
Like me to introduce our team while he's doing that, or? are you
Oh,
ready?
no, we're good. Go.
Give it
Yep.
a test. Click on this.
All right.
I just used that arrow.
Okay. Again, project location just out of just on the downtown loop. Again, just on the north side of 670 on the west side of Maine, east side of Baltimore, and south of 14th Street. Specific location is just the area and on the west side of the B&B Main Street Theater. And the applicant is seeking approval of a general, the block 138 PIA General Development Plan and declare the area blighted and insanitary and in need of rehabilitation pursuant to the Missouri PIA law 100-300. That's it. The overall site is 0.84 acres. It's currently zoned UR, so there's no need for rezoning for this site. This is a original ordinance, or the controlling ordinance for this site was passed back in August of 2004, which rezoned pretty much the Power and Light District from District UR and C or to District UR, and approved the development plan, and also the UR plan was approved. There are multiple vertical parcels on this lot, with the city owning the primary ground. So there's underground parcels and then above ground parcels, and then there's another, which were condominium units, which sits on the theater itself. The block is currently houses the theater with just parking around it. To the north of the site is a President's Hotel and mixed-use commercial. To the east is 3 Light apartment building, and then to the west is the new office building, and the south is the South Loop. He's going to give the presentation, but staff's recommendation is for approval. So I'll let Mr. Porter give you the PIA presentation. Dave McCubry.
Thank you, Olafu. Good morning. Good to see you. David McCubry. I'm with the Planned Industrial Expansion Authority of Kansas City, Missouri at 300 Wyandotte. We are before you today to satisfy a statutory requirement for a finding of an undeveloped industrial area as compared to what Olafu mentioned as far as blight and insanitary. This is not a blight or insanitary matter. This is an undeveloped industrial area as defined, which Mr. Potter will portray here in a second. But like I said, we're here to satisfy that requirement. Ultimately, if approved by the City Council, this area, Block 138, will be eligible for PIA's incentives. And more specifically, the incentives that will be considered will mirror what is contemplated in the 13th Amendment of the Master Development Agreement between the city and Cordish. So we're creating this potential area to effectuate that agreement, hopefully. So our team, Jim Potter is our consultant and prepared this analysis on our behalf. Also on the call should be John Monca with Cordish and Mr. Francais with the Stinson Law Firm. If I may introduce Jim Potter.
Thanks, David. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, thank you. Jim Potter. That one. You hear me? Okay. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Jim Potter, Development Initiatives, 3965 West 83rd Street, Prairie Village. As David mentioned, this is the consideration of establishing a new PIA plan. We would anticipate other approvals, project approvals to be coming through this board in future dates as the project may warrant. As Olafu mentioned, this project boundary is basically the west side of the block, bound by 14th on the north, Truman on the south, Baltimore on the west, and Main Street on the east. And please consider that Main Street also is the Main Street streetcar. There are multiple owners.
Not showing.
Well, as Olafu mentioned, there are multiple owners within the site. Basically, it boils down to two. It's the city of Kansas City, Missouri, as well as entities related to Cordish. And there are multiple ownership interests. There's subsurface, there's surface, and there's aerial.
Overhead projector. This time, yeah. There we go.
Works. Yep. Existing conditions, this is an underutilized surface parking lot. It's very rarely used, mostly on events related to the theater or other downtown events. There's no infrastructure to the interior portions of this parking lot. We do have utilities that are available to the perimeter, but obviously nothing that supports vertical development. Again, it's underutilized. Approximately 95% of it is underutilized or vacant surface parking. This plan area does lie within pre-existing areas which have previously been declared blighted through the city. Namely, those are the 1200 South Main, or 1200 Main South Loop TIF, 1200 Main South Loop CID, as well as the Northland Enhanced Enterprise Zone. Olafu mentioned existing zoning as UR. We don't seek any deviations from that. Design guidelines are through the Greater Downtown Area Plan. Standard PIA benefits will be available, but as David mentioned, we anticipate that the incentive package, which was contemplated in the 13th Amendment of the Master Development Agreement between the city and the developer, will be honored. That amendment has previously been approved through City Council, and as such, they recommended using the PIA to facilitate that agreement. Proposed project development includes development of the entire western portion of the block. We're looking at approximately 518,000 square feet of residential, retail, structured parking. Anticipated new height of the structure is approximately 25 stories. This contemplates the construction of 293 apartment units, 463 structured parking spaces, and 17,000 square feet of retail space. Total project budget is $156 million. We anticipate around 1,300 construction jobs, as well as 135 full-time positions once the building is placed in service. There are some issues in this particular block. It looks like a surface parking lot, but based on our soil borings and our geotech analysis, it appears that there's a large amount of construction debris on site, which will require deeper footing foundations package than normally required. Soils contain a mix of sand, gravel, building fragments, brick, and concrete. We do have, due to the urban nature of this site, we do have additional issues we need to deal with. This will require a specialized tower crane due to adjacent building proximity. We're going to have to adjust hours due to the downtown nature of this. We're going to have sidewalk and street protection. And we're going to have to adjust hours due to the streetcar line to the east. We also have a lack of laydown areas due to its urban nature, so those materials will need to be scheduled. Just a quick refresher, in order to approve a PIA plan, you have to have a finding that the area is either blighted, insanitary, or undeveloped industrial area. And in this case, we are looking at the undeveloped industrial area finding. That area, that definition is outlined in section 100.310, subsection 18 of the state statute. This basically is a two-part test. You have to find one.
Sorry, do you mind going back to the 2 slides prior and then just let me catch up and read both this one and the next one? Thanks.
So this basically says you have to have one of those 3 findings: blighted area, or an insanitary area, or an undeveloped industrial area.
Says in need of industrial development. Sorry.
And this is the definition of the undeveloped industrial area.
Sorry, can you go back 1 slide? And then in this same place where this comes from, is there a definition of industrial development?
I don't have that today.
And the industrial, well, I don't have it readily available, but it doesn't mean smokestacks and manufacturing. It's more industry, commerce, basically everything except single-family housing.
We can get that definition. That'd be helpful for me to feel good about it. And then can we go to the next one? Yeah, so again, it'd just be nice for me to feel good about a vote. No, primarily industrial area. I'd just like to know the definition of industrial. And I'm still reading.
So when does it change from an undeveloped industrial area when you have these other parcels around the one you're looking at that has been developed?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
This is talking about undeveloped industrial areas, and it starts talking about those, pardon me. Yeah, because we're talking about one lot. The other lots around it have already been developed. And this refers to the areas around what you're trying to do as undeveloped industrial lots. So when does that definition change?
I think if you allow him to continue, I think that will present itself.
Okay, and then assuming that I don't want to pass that up, and so hopefully we do get the answer to that. Again, just reading, efficient use of land for industrial plants. If I'm just going to make a public vote on something, I need to feel good about what industrial means, because to me, industrial plants is closer to smokestacks than anything but housing.
Can I read the definition to you? This
yes.
is revised Missouri statutes 100.310 definitions, number 9, industrial development. The acquisition, clearance, grading, improving, preparing of land for industrial and commercial development and use, and the construction, reconstruction, purchase, repair of industrial and commercial improvements, buildings, plants, additions, stores, shops, shopping centers, office buildings, hotels and motels, and parking garages, multifamily housing facilities, warehouses, distribution centers, machines, fixtures, structures, and other facilities relating to industrial and commercial use in blighted, insanitary, or undeveloped industrial areas, and the existing merchants, residents, and present businesses shall have the first option to redevelop the area under this act.
Thank you. That makes me feel much better about it.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
In the future, we'll go ahead and put that definition in. Just just to
Well, it's
cover
nice to know
bases.
that it is literally anything, but, because it doesn't feel good to say you're voting on something that's industrial, because most of us think it's something different.
Well, and I think one of the reasons we looked at undeveloped industrial because of the ownership structure. And if you say something is blighted, it's kind of, I mean, the city's a part owner, so. I continue?
Thank you.
All right. So this is basically a two-part test. We have to find one of these first factors. And I'm going to focus on factors 1 and 3 because that's what we identified. Defective or inadequate street layout or location of physical improvements, obsolescence, and inadequate subdivision or platting or contains vacant parcels of land not used economically. And then factor 3 is an area which contains buildings, plants, structures whose operation is not economically feasible. And that would go to our two-part test, which would trigger one or both of these. Causation 1 is retards the economic or social growth, or causation 2 creates an economic waste or social liability. We did note that factors 1 and 3 were present, and those triggered causes 1 and 2. 1 and 2. So just to dive into these a little bit, factors 1. This kind of goes back to the subsurface conditions that we found, which are, in our opinion, substandard for the proposed improvement that's going to go on this site. It triggers a lot more costs and planning to develop this project. We have lack of utilities. We have existing vacancy or underutilization. We have the obsolete platting or the multiple ownership issue. Those should all be remedied through this project. And again, we have the difficulty of construction. So a little history on this site. This picture is from 1928. You can see the President Hotel there to the north. I've circled, there used to be an old gas station on that'd be the southeast corner of 14th and Baltimore. You can see this building to the left. It says Radio & Co. I don't know if you can make that out. That is the site of where the Power and Light building will be constructed. The Power and Light building was constructed beginning 1930 and I think went into 1932. This is another image of that gas station that's located on site. Don't know the date of this. So we'll jump ahead here. We can see the Power and Light building under construction. In that same circle, we note that gas station is gone now. So it was demolished somewhere around 1930-ish, 1929, and was replaced by a 4-story building, which basically takes up our entire site right now. It's another image here. I think this is prior to 35 because you can see that the Power and Light building is still under construction. Main Street Theater to the east, President Hotel to the north. And then this is from 1955, and that building is still there. So we know that this building was in place at least through 1955. We're not sure exactly when it was torn down, but demolition standards back in those days is they just demolished it and pushed everything into the basements and the sub-basements of these structures. And that is evident right now from our soil borings. Moving to factor 3, again, we have the underutilized nature of the site, but this also adds in an issue of crime. We were talking about crime earlier downtown. I think everybody's aware of the prevalence of crime. We are noting about 5 incidents per month within the redevelopment area. We would think that would change with the construction of this project. Here's some images. You know, it's a surface parking lot. So I think we've all driven past this many times, but what we need to be concerned about is what's underneath the surface. And the surface parking lot itself is not in great shape. I mean, it's adequate. We did note some graffiti. And then we're moving to the second part of the test, which the first cause is retards economic or social growth, or creates an economic waste or social liability. And this basically is an economic argument. Presently, that site is, the assessed value is $1.4 million per year. Cordish is proposing building a $156 million project. Obviously, the assessed value will go up. We have the impact of 293 potentially new households to the area. We have e-tax that would go along with that. We have e-tax that would be generated through construction employment as well as permanent employment, and as well as new utility taxes. Same issues on causation 2, but we're also looking at the crime impacts. We anticipate once this block is activated, and I think with any Cordish property in the power and light, those are manned 24/7, as will this site, where this building will be. So we would see those crime impacts reduced. And to summarize, we did note that factors 1 and 3 were present, which led to causes 1 and 2. It is our opinion that the site does qualify as an undeveloped industrial area per the state statutes. And with that, be happy to answer any questions. I believe we do have representatives of Cordish online that probably could go through their plan a little bit more.
Yeah, y'all have anything to add?
Thank you, Jim and David. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I think you did a great job, Jim. Love the historic photos. John Monka from the Cordish Companies and Power Light District. Just want to express gratitude to the Commission for consideration of this project as approved by the PIEA Board. And want to say that we look forward to moving ahead with this project to create more residential density downtown. We're willing to answer any questions that you might have, if any. And I just request that the Commission approves this case. Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the Commission to the applicant?
I have a few. So what's the timeline? And maybe this is, do you have to build affordable housing in between the building? And the other one is, if the South Loop project happens, would there be coordination with that construction? Or is it just gonna be, a total mess in downtown when all these projects are going on?
You're right. It's not going to be easy with the streetcar there. They're going to, as Jim mentioned earlier, I think he mentioned it, that timing of the work a lot of it will have to be done at night and to accommodate traffic and so forth. So yes, it's not going to be easy. Your first question was
the timeline. Just like when would you start and when would be done?
The last I heard, they were trying to get it done before the end of the year. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But certainly by spring is the goal to be through the PIA and looking at moving dirt, cranes in the air, as they say, by spring of next year. You had another question there that I wasn't.
Affordable housing.
Affordable housing. Oh,
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah, part of that master development agreement between the city and Cordish included an affordable housing component. And that was satisfied with the Saxon on the Midland project, the old Midland, just to the west and high rise. That's I forgot how many units. I think it's about 150 units. That is entirely affordable, and as part of the agreement with 1, 2, 3, and 4 Light was that project would be entirely affordable. So that satisfies that agreement.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Okay. At this time, let's open it up for public testimony. If there's anybody out there that would like to speak regarding docket item number 10, please come forward or raise your hand using the Zoom feature and you'll be called upon.
We have no hands raised online.
Okay, so we'll close public testimony then. Anything else y'all would like to add? And today we're just looking at the voting of finding of blight, correct?
Undeveloped industrial area. Undeveloped industrial area versus blight. It's not blight.
And the approval of the development plan, right? Yeah.
Okay. All right. Nothing else to add? Okay. So we'll close testimony then and speak amongst the commission, or if there's nothing to discuss, I'll take a motion, please.
Chair Crowell, I move to approve docket item number 10 without conditions and with the finding of an unimproved industrial area.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second for approval of docket item number 10 and finding of the industrial area, right? Okay, Margaret, can you take roll call on the motion, please?
Beasley,
Aye.
Crawl,
Aye.
Enders.
Aye.
Hasek.
Aye.
Lynch,
Aye.
Padilla.
Aye.
All right, it looks like the motion passes 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Many thanks.
Yep, good luck as you move forward.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I think we're down to our discussion item, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Last item. We had attached a memo to your final docket for today. I hope you all scrolled down to see that. And it's just related to the heights on the Country Club Plaza. We got into some discussion at your second meeting in October about what regulates height in and around the plaza, and just wanted to provide you with some background information in case any of that was unclear. So the memo kind of goes through the four main documents, if you will, that regulate height in the plaza area. There's the zoning and development code. Most of the plaza is zoned B4-5, but there are a couple of UR plans on the periphery, and there's some other zoning districts around what we would consider the heart of the plaza. There's ordinance 151036, which established special standards for the Country Club Plaza, and also defined when we say from a zoning perspective, Country Club Plaza, we're talking about a very specific area that is just the kind of the heart of the plaza, that does not consider some areas that you might think of as the plaza. And we've incorporated the map in the memo. And then we had ordinance 190. Oh, I should also say that ordinance that established special standards for the Country Club Plaza did establish some height limits for the plaza as well. So B4-5 doesn't have a height limit, but the special standards for the Country Club Plaza does. Then we had ordinance 190100, which established a special character overlay known as the Plaza Bowl overlay, which is adjacent to the Country Club Plaza, but a different area. We included a new map for you because that ordinance, the maps that are included, are really hard to read if you're going back to look at those, because there are lots of overlays on that map. And then we have the Midtown Plaza Area Plan, which has additional height recommendations and guidelines, but is not adopted as an ordinance, and so is not regulatory in nature. So wanted to bring that to your attention. We included some links in that memo. So if you'd like to look at the original ordinances or go directly to the Midtown Plaza Area Plan, those are included in that memo. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have or discuss anything in more detail, but just wanted to provide that to you as background so that it's all in one place. If you ever want to dive into more about the ordinances that regulate that area today.
I'll try not to take up too much time, but can I jump on that computer and pull some things up to share?
Sure.
I think it's more helpful with a visual. So Alec, I might need help with making sure I share things correctly. I'm going to pull it up first. Once I have this pulled up, I'll hopefully not take too much time. Okay, so then if you just help me share, I think.
Yeah.
I'm just
Like
gonna get,
Chrome, that'll be
I'm
it.
definitely gonna get rid of representation because it didn't just close out of it. And then
So I really appreciate the summary that you provided of these four pieces, and maybe there's more. So like, the way I understand it, number one, it's just general, the zoning code. It applies everywhere. Number four is just a area plan, as would, as other areas have area plans. And so then the two unique things, I think, to this area are the two ordinances in between that are specific to the Country Club Plaza. So one of them, let's see, would be, okay, so right here we have 88-120-03-H, which is mentioned. It's like the second one in the memo. And this has use restrictions, which I think are pretty clearly defined. Additional restrictions on uses located within the area known as the Country Club Plaza, which is the area bounded by, gives, and it says what's prohibited. I don't know how unique that is to different parts of the city, but clearly it's called out here as bracketed numbers 4 and 5. And so then we see what has a 4 and 5 with all these different types of property uses. So then in the bottom of this table, I think, let's see, for lot and building standards. So this map comes up as a footnote for number 5. So 4 buildings located within the Country Club Plaza, building heights shall be limited or allowed to the heights and stories as shown on the Plaza Bowl concept map attached to hereto is Exhibit B and incorporated herein by reference. So this, I think, is like the best case for why, if you say that, if anyone would say that there's a bottom of a bowl, this is kind of it in theory, which to me is like, I just think it's lacking, that this exhibit, which is an exhibit to a footnote, which is the only one in the entire city, is limiting heights. So if we go to Google Street View, just for the sake of example, oh gosh, sorry, this mouse. Let's see if I can get here.
Yeah, you can.
Oh,
It's 47th, right? Because there's a church.
sorry, I'm clicking. It's just taking a minute. So this is just like a fun corner in a couple different ways. So,
Kelly Building.
oh my gosh, how do I make this a little smaller? Okay, so in theory, this map, which is cut off on the right side, so we, in theory, don't know where it ends, but we know where it ends, which is determining all the heights for all these property owners. The line, first of all, is confusing to me because it's not one property owner, it's multiple property owners, but then you have some sections that are omitted, which I think are absolutely considered part of the Country Club Plaza. Anyway, so then this dotted line, which splits parcels, which splits buildings, allows for parts of buildings and parts of parcels to be a certain height and other parts of parcels and other parts of buildings to not be a certain height because of this dotted line in this map that's cut off as an exhibit to a footnote without a lot of explanation. And if we look here, that's 1 story, 2 story, 3 stories, 4 stories. Maybe because it's a parking garage that doesn't count. But then this building, you have 1 floor, I mean, maybe even 2 if you want to call it that, but let's not call it that. You definitely have 1 floor, 2 floors, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So in this one corner, and then actually if we swap around and go to Unity Temple has 4 stories. Well, Unity Temple is on this map is excluded, but then on the other map, that is ordinance 190-100, Unity Temple is included as part of the Country Club Plaza, referencing ordinance 151-036, which is this one. So the ordinances referencing this ordinance are incongruous and conflicting. The dotted lines that split parcels and split buildings are ambiguous, and what's called for in tiny text on a photo of a cutoff exhibit of a footnote without any explanation is not in line with the built environment. So I still would contend that this was done in a way that is so beyond the pale of acceptable that I don't think we should view it as enforceable. I don't see how you can enforce this when there's like glaring mistakes left and right. So that's kind of my perspective of the Plaza Bowl as it stands. And again, appreciate all the different layers of what's there. And there's nothing actionable with it. I just think that it's like when things come before us, we can review it based upon all the great information we're provided from developers, from city staff, context, et cetera. But we shouldn't be looking to this cutoff map without explanation, which has all these conflicts, to determine what's allowed and what's not allowed.
I will agree that I wish the map weren't cut off. That is how it was attached to the ordinance. And so that is how it's shown in the zoning and development code. I don't know how that came to be. The building that you're showing at the corner of Pennsylvania is not included in ordinance 151036 with the 3-story height limit. It's included in ordinance 190100. And those areas don't overlap. So the overlay that applies is just based on the location of the property. And only one of those is going to apply to any particular property.
Sorry, can you?
That's correct. It was done in multiple steps.
Yeah.
So they're not conflicting. They just deal with different parts of the plaza. And one was done as a text amendment to the code and one was done as an overlay standalone. They're not, there's no conflict.
Yeah, so the 151036 was originally done, and then that particular ordinance then was expanded. So now that the whole overlay system includes the 190100 plus the 151036. So the map you should be looking at is, if you look at our agenda, page 3 at the bottom, that's the piece that's affected by the Plaza Bowl overlay, all of those together.
The orange and the blue.
The orange and the blue, correct.
Yeah.
And
two different
in some
layers.
cases, there's a little bit difference in what's required or by height or requirements themselves between the two.
But ordinance 190100, which established the Plaza Bowl overlay, only applies to the areas shown in orange in the memo attached to the docket.
Yeah, so
And the ordinance 151036, which established the Country Club Plaza
okay, so
special standards only applies to the areas shown in blue, which are defined in the ordinance as Country Club Plaza.
So Pennsylvania and West 47th Street, that intersection, which is where we're at on Google Maps, right?
Half of that, the east half falls into the Country Club Plaza special standards, and the west half of that intersection falls into the Plaza Bowl overlay.
Yes, so that's exactly what I was just saying. So 151036, the blue area, which says you can't be above 3 stories. That's why I'm pointing out that there's 4 stories right here. And then if you look across the street at the Lockton building where it says you can't be above 10 stories, it's 11 stories. So I'm just pointing out that like when it was even written, it was wrong.
That's probably, no. Okay.
And then Unity
If-
Temple also is the
This
same.
zoning ordinance, if there's an existing building that is already above that height limit, then obviously, or I think it's obvious, maybe it isn't, that building is allowed to remain at that height as a non-conforming.
We just, yeah, so I mean,
We have to, knock down 1 story simply because we've had.
And I'm not sure when these buildings in particular were constructed, but the Country Club Plaza special standards were adopted in 2016, and the Plaza Bowl overlay was adopted in 2019.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of existing buildings in this area when these regulations were adopted.
yeah, so we just saw Olafu today present 11 subsections for a major street amendment plan about like the detail that would be required to do something to a professional level. If this is the only example in the city where we're going to parcel by parcel decide what the heights are allowed to be and list all of the parcels in there, but then have dotted lines that split parcels, incorporate different property owners, and that aren't actually consistent with the built environment,
that to me just is, again, beyond the pale of enforceable. Like there are so many flaws in it that we just can't, you can't view that code as enforceable when there's multiple conflicts.
Well, I would strongly disagree with you.
Okay.
And I mean, you're welcome to provide your opinion.
Yeah, no, that's all that's what it is. That's
city
it's
zoning
purely the
code, but
opinion.
to suggest, well, I'm not going to get into a discussion. Obviously, it is my opinion that our zoning code is enforceable and that the plausible overlay is enforceable. And if you want to have a discussion offline about this, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, sorry. I thought this was an appropriate time because we were discussing like the memo of the information, and again, it's nice to see, and so I just wanted to clarify the errors that I see in it and why, again, I think there are certain parts that absolutely, again, if we go back to the code, there are things that are just so nicely called out as you have in other parts of the code that say, for example, our use standards. And that's something that's just easy for us to follow. Like today, the reason I was upset about calling an area blighted or, not a
Industrial.
yeah, is because like we have an obligation to do things that we believe are morally, truthfully, in good faith, accurate. And so I, in good faith, can look at these use standards, which are written up very clearly as an actual paragraph and understand the intent as it relates to the table. But when we have that map that's part of a footnote to something else that conflicts multiple times, it's just tough to say, yep, this is the right.
We're going to have to agree to disagree.
Well, the part then I guess that you might maybe agree with me on about conflicting, if you look at the Unity Temple parcel, some maps pick it up, some maps don't pick it up. And again, like I think that's just a pure conflict when you have like, which map do you choose?
We choose the map that was adopted as part of the ordinance by the city council.
2 ordinances, 2 maps. So you just take the most recent one? Because the first ordinance didn't have it. That's the issue.
Yes, because it was not included in the Country Club Plaza definition. It's included in the Plaza Bowl overlay.
2 different things.
Yeah, 2 different things.
It's not. So it's in the first map, it's intentionally omitted. And then in the second map, in a new ordinance, without ever calling it out as being added, it gets picked up. So the map changes without any recognition of the map changing, and it is in conflict with the 3-story rule. So it can all be fixed. I'm just saying that there are issues, and I'd hate that we're arguing about like if there are issues. I'd rather determine like, oh, well, we can interpret them different ways. And that's fine. Thanks for acknowledging this. But it's actually like, it's factual. Again, it's just like me showing Google Maps. It's an 11-story building. You can say it's fine because
we can look at the plausible overlay ordinance if you'd like when the meeting concludes, because that ordinance, in addition to including a map, describes all of the legal descriptions of the properties that are included.
Yeah.
So the Unity Temple site is not included in the Country Club Plaza as it's defined by the zoning ordinance, and is included in the plausible overlay as defined by the ordinance adopted by the city council.
Yeah, I remember that included several parcels as part of the map and ownership and all of that when the ordinance, the Plaza Bowl ordinance went into place. So it referenced the map and what's included in that and to adjust.
The map's 88 dash 20A1186. Yes, I agree that if there's a map that specifically has parcels listed, that's the map. I don't know why this is so contentious. I'm not arguing with any map that exists that says something. I'm just saying if there are 2 maps that were both adopted by ordinance that don't share the same information, it's something we should acknowledge. But that's okay. I get that it's a weird issue. I think that as the only place in the city that has these requirements, I think it's what I'm trying to highlight, as again, I anticipate we're going to see lots of development in this area, is that the existing information, which is prohibiting height, has many issues with it in the code. And it is not nearly as well documented as other parts of the code. And if it was, we probably wouldn't have all these conflicts and all these weird situations.
That's really, yeah, that was it. Just wanted to share those things. Thanks for
Yeah, I
indulging me.
appreciate, I mean, it's obvious that you spend a lot of time in looking at this and working on it. So, yeah, I think it's just one of those things that we need to maybe ask staff just to take a look, just to confirm. I mean, issue, but I don't know.
I
mean,
think
if there
what-
is.
I think what I want to chime in on is each time we've had a project come, there were conflicting interpretations as to which ordinance applied to that project. That's what I'm hearing our frustration is on this. And what I hear Tyler trying to point out is when you look at each ordinance individually and those maps, it's still confusing the way the map is and how it has divided some of those properties that are between one owner that falls into different ordinances, if I'm following what he's trying to point out. I understand what he said because I was here when it first started having those issues on how are we applying this and hearing each person, developer, resident, neighborhoods trying to apply what these ordinances say. So what I'm hearing Tyler saying is there a way that we can better language what these ordinances are saying so that the common person understands what they're looking at? Because frankly, y'all know me, I'm gonna question you anyway. But those people that are not here or just get hit every now and then with a project, it helps to have it in language they understand. The other thing that I always go back to, it makes perfect sense to you. You're in the industry, you see it every day. So try to take those blinders off and look at it from how other people are trying to understand what it says.
I agree that particularly the maps attached to the Plaza Bowl overlay 190100 are very hard to read, which was one reason that we put together the orange and blue map in the memo, is to identify which areas are covered by each of those ordinances. We went back to the ordinances to look at what was attached and read the legal descriptions for the properties that were included. The hope is that this helps clarify a little bit when people are coming forward, or for you all as you're looking at future applications, which of these ordinances applies. Because they are areas that in the original ordinances should not overlap, and because they weren't intended to overlap.
I forgot the Plaza Theater, the old theater building. It's a 4-story building. Like there are just so many examples where this thing was done in a way that no one's gonna, I don't think this body's gonna approve something that's gonna, be a massive tower in the middle of the plaza. And there's the concept of the bowl is very clearly, I think, understood as a concept, but I think that it is ridiculous to be rigid with any of it when there are so many examples that fly in the face of what's implied.
But I think what I'm hearing on that is we've got to look at when those other buildings were erected. Were they erected before those ordinances came in? So they are grandfathered. They do not apply. So that's where some of this education and knowledge of your area comes into play when developers are trying to do things too. They may want to point to that building, but staff has the history to say, no, that was before this ordinance came. So your request for height does not apply. But again, that takes us back to the language so that the average person understands what they're looking at.
I'm just wondering, so for example, for the tennis courts that are fell under the 3 stories,
The tennis courts are not included in either of the overlay districts. So the tennis court properties.
Because people say that's the plaza. Well, why wouldn't it?
Well, I think one of the key things to keep in mind is that
aren't they?
people consider as the plaza is not necessarily what legally we have defined as the Country Club Plaza, which
Aren't
has a
they-
very specific meaning in the zoning.
Step right into our.
Yeah.
No, but on the map that you, on the memo, on the map on this is the tennis courts are in the blue area.
No,
Yeah, so he's looking at the overlay district, and there's a white dotted line that does encapsulate them. And then, of course, the exhibit that I pointed out, the red line is incomplete on the eastern boundary. So there's no way of legally knowing if it should be included or not
There's a
included.
description, a written description, and the written description comes down J.C. Nichols Parkway, which is now Mill Creek Park. The tennis courts are on the east side of Mill Creek Parkway, and are not included in the Country Club Plaza definition.
Yeah. And so again, the other
guess I'm
piece
just
is the
looking
bowl
at-
overlay that
yeah,
he's
just
looking
looking at
which
this.
a
And
recommendation.
that is, yeah, so that map is very confusing because there are like 3 different overlaid colors and, hatch marks. All of the colors in that map come from the Midtown Plaza area plan, which has a lot of height recommendations that are not codified regulatorily in the zoning ordinance. So yes, that plan has a recommended height for, lots of property surrounding the plaza that is not, we don't enforce as part of the zoning code.
And that's the map that started this, because I identified those 3 areas in green, which are part of the second phase of the bowl, which I
Mhm.
think are codified correctly. So it's the third piece of what you sent in the memo. That I think is codified correctly. It's very clear. There are height restrictions on these 3 unique green parcels. But I do not think that the phase 1 was codified in a way that is enforceable. And again, that's obviously something that everyone can disagree with. That's what I think.
Well, I mean, and I would also add the
You're
enforceability.
you're gonna speak into the microphone so that folks online can hear you too. Thank you, sir.
I identify myself too. I'm sorry, Mario Vasquez is Assistant City Manager, Director of City Planning. To the point of enforceability, I mean, I think obviously, as Ms. Baxter said, the Court of Ordinances is written, includes more than just the map, includes the legal descriptions for the properties that are affected by the respective Court of Ordinances. If there is a dispute about whether something is being enforced correctly or not, I mean, that's something that a private party is going to bring up to this body and to the city. But it is really our role, I think, to say or debate whether something is affordable or enforceable or isn't. I mean, it is unless it is found not to be. And I think at this point, I think we can say that it is. So, and yet there's lots of activity going on at the plaza, or at least talked about. So I'm sure a lot of these things are going to get put to a test. So I think that's important for us to really understand what the court ordinances currently say, so that when these things begin to, test us down the road, we are prepared to, we have a good understanding of what we're dealing with. And I think, understanding that we have 2 different ordinances, 2 overlays, things are in, things are out, is hugely important. And ultimately, it may come to a point also where we say like, well, this ain't working very well, or this, or this is, or how can we make things more understandable? And that's a whole different set of issues for us to deal with. But until that point, I mean, what we have in our hands is what we have to work with. So, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion?
No, thank you for opening it up.
Yeah, appreciate putting the stuff together, and I certainly appreciate the comments and what Commissioner Enders kind of pointing out maybe we need to clarify in some way so everybody understands, kind of like Commissioner Beasley said. Anything else to come before the commission? All right, with that, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, thank you, everybody. See you in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Is everybody here 2 weeks from